the April 4th, 2022 meeting of the Pasadena City Council. It's 4:30 p.m. and we're ready to get started. If we can call the roll to ensure there's a quorum present.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Hampton is absent. Councilmember Kennedy. Councilmember Kennedy.
Here.
Councilmember Madison.
Here.
Councilmember Masuda.
Here.
Councilmember Rivas.
Here.
Councilmember Williams.
Here.
Vice Mayor Wilson.
Here.
Mayor Gordo.
Here.
There's a quorum of the council present.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Wilson, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Gladly, Mayor. Please stand. Face the flag. Put your right hand over your heart. Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have first matter. Do we have there are no ceremonial matters, and so we'll jump right into public comment for matters not on the agenda.
Thank you, Mayor. Public comment will be limited to a total of 20 minutes at the beginning of the meeting and will continue at the conclusion of the meeting if necessary. Comments will be limited to a minute and a half. The City Council may not discuss, or take action on issues not on the agenda, except that members of the City Council or staff may briefly respond to statements made or questions posed. The first speaker is Pastor Kerwin Manning, followed by Heavenly Hughes, followed by Victor Hodson.
Welcome.
Hello.
Welcome,
Pastor Manning, you have 1 minute and 30 seconds. I'll ring a 30-second bell at that time. Go ahead.
No need to ring the bell for me. I feel compelled today to the council members just to offer a prayer for you guys. Father, in the name of Jesus, I thank you for our city council. I thank you, Lord, for the privilege of living in this great city. Lord, you said in your word that we are to pray for the peace and prosperity of the city in which we dwell, and we pray for the peace and prosperity of Pasadena. And then your word declares, oh God, that you have set the government in place and government officials in place according to Romans 13. Lord, for us to follow, Lord, and for them to lead with integrity of heart, Lord God, and we pray in the name of Jesus that you would touch our city council, that you would touch every council member, you would bless them, bless their families, bless their children, Lord God. I pray, Lord God, that your goodness and grace would flow over them. Pray especially for our mayor, oh God, even as your word declares in Proverbs that the heart of the king is in the hands of the Lord. We believe the same to be true with the heart of our mayor. Guide his heart, give him the wisdom and the grace that he needs, Father God. We pray the same for every council member, for our city manager, that you would touch her and use her for your glory, oh God. There's so many issues.
Pastor Manning, it seems we lost you. So we'll move on to Heavenly Hughes, followed by Victor Hodson, followed by Jason Reedy.
Thank you, Pastor Manning, for on behalf of all city employees.
Ms. Hughes?
Yes, thank you so much, Pastor Manning, for your prayer. My name is Heavenly Hughes, co-founder of My Tribe Rise. We focus on public safety, food and housing insecurity, social and economic justice, right here in the city of Pasadena. Rome is burning. Today, Pasadena Now published an article by former Pasadena Mayor William Pepperin titled, "When Lawmakers Become Lawbreakers," addressing Mayor Victor Gordo's perfect example of failure of leadership. Rome is burning. Mayor Victor Gordo, be true to what you said during your campaign for mayor. You said you will prioritize the community, not marginalize us. Mayor Gordo, you said you will listen to the community, not stifle our voices. You say you will deliberate disciplinary action when it comes to police brutality, not pass the buck to the district attorney. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated 54 years ago today for being one of the greatest leaders in the movement for justice for Black lives, for Black people. Mayor Gordo, today we ask, what are you doing to protect, serve, and save Black lives? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hughes. Next.
Victor Hodson, followed by Jason Reedy. Then we have cards submitted by Brittany Pollock, Ryan Bell, and Aaron Markowitz that have not yet checked into the meeting. Mr. Hodson?
Hello, can you hear me?
We can. 1 minute, 30 seconds. Go ahead.
Hello, Pasadena City Council. I'm Victor Hodson, one of the founders of My Tribe Rise. We focus on police accountability, food insecurity, social and economic justice, and solutions on ending gang violence. Rodney King was beaten by Los Angeles police. We all saw the video, and the police still were not held accountable. Now we have Anthony McClain that was shot in the back by Pasadena police and died. And we are still seeking justice for him. Hold the officers accountable that took Anthony McClain's life. We are still shouting the same cry for over 30 years ago. Hold police accountable that victimize our people and our community. Say his name, Martin Luther King Jr., Rodney King, Anthony McClain, and many others. You know, Martin Luther King's last speech was April 3rd, 1968, which was yesterday. He said, "Be true to what you say on paper. I read, we have the authority to protest for what's right." And he was killed the next day on April 4th in 1968. Pasadena City Council, we got to do better. And we need to hold police accountable that are victimizing our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
For my
Thank you, Tocayo. Next.
Jason Reedy. Then we have Brittany Pollock, Ryan Bell, Aaron Markowitz, who are not checked into the meeting. So we move on to Jane Penangadin. Mr. Reedy, go ahead. 1 minute, 30 seconds.
All right, so first, the city council and its mayor are truly running from the people. It's been 8 weeks since the last regular city council meeting, barring people from providing commentary on how this city continues to fail its Black residents, and specifically how it has worked hand in hand with the Pasadena Police Department to wash its hands of the murder of Anthony McClain. Gordo wants to move the 20-minute public comment period on matters not on the meeting's agenda to the end of the city council meetings moving forward. Why is that, Victor? Because you're tired of people reminding you of how complicit you are in Anthony McClain's murder? So again, we're calling to demand that the pigs, Edwin de McGuindon and Ron Serrano, be fired for taking part in the murder of Anthony McClain. I want to remind folks that the murder of Anthony McClain occurred after the car Anthony was a passenger in was stopped for not having a front license plate, a pretextual stop. These stops can and have deadly consequences for our people, and this department uses them to target and terrorize Black people. I want to know why Edwin de McGuindon hasn't been disciplined for breaking department policy. Why hasn't Edwin been fired for breaking department policy? It's because Pasadena doesn't care about Black people. 10 years later, and Kendrick McDade's murder still haunts the city. Whatever happened to Matthew Griffin and Jeffrey Newland? Nothing. Still on the force. God damn. When are you guys going to step up and do something about this? Instead of cowering from the people, instead of creating all these different policies and procedures to basically circumvent any type of blame and responsibility that you all have by continually defending these officers. And
Mr. Reedy, your time has expired.
Thank you, Mr. Reedy.
We'll go to Brittany Pollock, Ryan Bell, and Aaron Markowitz are not here to speak, so we'll go to Jane Penangadin. Sorry, Jane, I'm mispronouncing that. 1 minute, 30 seconds. Go ahead.
Thanks. I would be remiss if I didn't start by mentioning what everyone else is probably here to talk about in public comment today, which is that moving the public comment to the end of the meeting is going to have a completely chilling effect on the public's ability to come and speak to the city council. I've given public comment at the end of a meeting before, after 11 p.m. It's so hard to do that and get up early to go to work the next day. It's going to make it impossible for a lot of people. It's going to make it so that people aren't heard. And we all know that there is a specific reason why it's being moved now, and it's because of what people have been discussing in public comment, which is the murder of Anthony McLean and holding PPD accountable for that. But I also just wanted to take this opportunity to address the people of Pasadena and the public and announce that our rent control campaign that we have been working on since 2017 is moving forward, and that last Monday we submitted over 20,000 signatures to the city to get our rent control measure qualified on the ballot for this November. And I'm just so proud of how the community in Pasadena has come together to get this done ourselves. And I just wanted to give a huge shout out to everyone who's listening, who's been working so hard on this campaign. I'm so proud of all of us, and I'm looking forward to winning this at the end of the year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Penegadu.
Brittany Pollock is not available. Ryan Bell is not available. Aaron Markowitz, not available. John D, not available. Karina K, followed by Janae Lennox, who may not be here, and then Michelle White. Karina, 1 minute, 30 seconds. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you for my 90 seconds per week. My name is Karina. I am a Pasadena resident and a member of Black Lives Matter Los Angeles. Big ups to the Pasadena Tenants Union, who's also doing the work that you all refuse to do. But I'm calling in yet again to uplift the demands to fire Edwin McWinden, Ronald Serrano, and others who showed up to murder, act out of policy, and to cover. Again, you all following a legacy of doing nothing when it comes to Black death in the city of Pasadena. Yeah, moving your comment, the public comment period to the end is not doing your job as public servants, but it is in alignment with everything that Victor Gordo is, which is corrupt, which is backtracking on all of his campaign promises, and it really is just a joke. The community knows that what happened to Anthony McLean was just absolutely wrong and disgusting, and you all sitting on your hands week after week after week, doing nothing, failing to force the city manager to fire those officers, to instill disciplinary action against the police officers is disgusting, y'all. Disgusting. Andy, why are you on your phone? Dude, Cynthia, why are you leaving? We need justice for Anthony McLean, police accountability, racial justice in Pasadena. Sitting on your hands and doing nothing is not acceptable to the public. Figure it out. Figure out how you're going to do it. Get creative. You're not in office to do whatever the hell you want to. You're in office to actually bring about societal conditions that we can stomach, guys.
Your comment, your public time is expired.
Thank you, Ms. Kay. Next speaker.
Thank you. Ryan Bell came in. Janae Lennox is not in the meeting. We'll take Ryan Bell, and then followed by Michelle White. Oh, Aaron Markowitz showed up. Okay. Ryan, you
thank
have
you.
1 minute, 30
yes,
seconds. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I'm going to let my my colleagues from the rent control campaign speak more about this. I won't take up very much time, but just wanted to announce that we submitted our signatures last Monday. We were very excited to turn in 15% more signatures than we believe are needed to qualify. So the county is working on that now. I'm grateful to Council Member Jess Rivas for her support and look forward to talking to the whole city. We've reached over 20,000 people in our efforts, talking to our neighbors, and we're very excited. The community has really spoken with a bold voice, even just in the signature gathering phase. And we're grateful to our fellow tenants and our neighbors who signed on to make sure that this process could go before the people. Thank you.
Thank you. We're understanding Brittany Pollock is in the meeting, but we can't see her. So we'll move on to Aaron Markowitz, and hopefully she can call the office and find out why we can't see her. Aaron, 1 minute, 30 seconds.
Yeah, thanks for taking my comment. Just also wanted to make a comment about the incredible just statement that the over 15,000 signatures for rent control in Pasadena is. You know, we spoke with a lot of people who weren't able to sign because they're disenfranchised in the city, and just really want to see this. We spoke, and obviously, you know, with tens of thousands of people who are registered voters who want to see rent control, and not just because you know, they want obviously more affordable housing generally, but because they want to have stable communities. We want to have stable communities. We want to be able to just live in the city without the fear of being evicted next month, whether just through a whim of our landlord or through you know, an egregious rent increase. We spoke with dozens of folks, in fact, people who live in dozens of different buildings who were getting as high as 60% rent increases, you know, in a you know, one time, or we're getting multiple rent increases throughout the year for years and years. People who were not able to get stuff fixed at their place and have nowhere to turn to get this done. Yeah, it's a problem we've been highlighting at these council meetings for at least five years, really, you know, much longer than that. And it's very exciting. I think the 20,000 people standing behind us are also very excited to be able to do some direct democracy.
Aaron, your time is expired.
For the city. Thank you.
Thank you. We now found Brittany Pollock, so we'll bring Brittany into the meeting.
Hello, can you all hear me?
We can. 1 minute, 30 seconds. Go ahead.
All right, well, I am calling, as many others have called, to demand accountability for the murders of Anthony McLean, Kendrick McDade, J.R. Thomas, among many other community members who have been brutally interacted with police, and you all just sit there doing nothing. I'm just confused. Do you think this is not your job to listen to the public? Every time there's a public comment period about this, there's only like 1 or 2 of you with your cameras on. Where the hell are the rest of you? This is your job to listen to the public. Like, where are you? This is ridiculous. And many of you say, oh, we can't do anything, and you're just dragging your feet on all of this stuff week after week when the community keeps coming back. But you can do something. You can do many things. You can defund the police budget. You decided, and I will continue to name this number so the public knows, you decided to give 34% of the city's money to the police. 34%. Over 1 in every $3 is going to the police. And the police murder people. They've murdered people on tape for years, and you decided to give them 34% of the budget. That is ridiculous. Make a change. We know what these institutions do. They're built on violence. Police stem from slave catching. This is literally racist. Their inception is racist. We cannot change that. Take some form of responsibility yourselves. You decided to do this job. This is your job. Make the community more safe by holding the police accountable.
Ms. Pollock, your time has expired.
For murdering people.
Thank you. John D.
Thank you, ma'am.
Followed by Janae Lennox are not here, so we'll move on to Michelle White, followed by Anthony Manusos, followed by Jill Shook. Michelle, 3 minutes. Sorry, 1 minute, 30 seconds.
Yeah, I wish it were 3 minutes. I'm the chair of the Pasadena Tenant Justice Coalition, and we were able to get enough signatures, hopefully to get it on the November ballot, to have a rental registry, rent control, a rent board, and just cause eviction protections. We got over 13,000 that were needed. We got more than that. We got 15,352. We believe that's enough to make it so that we only have to have our signatures, not each one of them counted, but do a selective sampling of the signatures that have been submitted, and we hope that we are on the November ballot, and that we continue to get the support from our voters. We've been asking you to do this for more than 20 years. You never included it in the housing element, so we have to do it ourselves. And we wish that we had more support than Jess Rivas and Jean Masuda on the city council. We'd be more than happy to talk to each one
Michelle,
of you.
your
and
time has expired.
persuade you otherwise. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll call Anthony Manusos, followed by Jill Shook. Anthony, *6 to unmute. Anthony, *6 to unmute. All right, let's go to Jill Shook. See if Jill is there. Jill? Jill?
Yes, thank you.
There you go.
Today I want to offer, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Great. I want to offer my appreciation today for the mayor and the planning staff for their efforts on the housing element. They carefully outlined the 26 points that 15 Pasadena organizations submitted in this last meeting, and they also took public comments. So I want to thank you for that. I'm eager to see if these public comments were recorded and listed in the housing element as required by law. And also, I'm eager to be part of another meeting that would be made public where the full 26 points would be discussed. Additionally, I do appreciate the planning staff making the use of religious land a priority. The RENA needs to be strengthened, so I hope that churches can be listed in the RENA as part of, since they are willing and ready to offer some of their land for the use of affordable housing. Sierra Madre has just passed their overlay zone, so that's the first in the state. So I hope that we can be the second. And I just do really hope that you can get some movement going very soon on the issue of Anthony McLean. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shook.
Anthony Manusos will try it again, and then Yvonne Trice is not checked into the meeting, so we would move on to Mohammed Tajar. Anthony's not there.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mohammed Tajar. I'm a Pasadena resident and attorney at the ACLU of Southern California. And the ACLU stands alongside the countless other organizations and individuals that have spoken today to strenuously oppose the mayor's efforts to move general public comment to the end of agendas. You know, this potential policy is, I think, wrong-headed. It chills future public speech and is legally suspect. You know, it's wrong-headed because public officials should welcome rather than run away.
Mr. Tajar, that matter is on our agenda for discussion tonight. This is for matters not on the agenda. So would you like to hold your comments for that item for the agenda item?
No, and the reason is what I was.
It shouldn't be that long. If you wanted to stick around with
because actually, the reason, Mr. Mayor, I can't do. I wanted to make those comments now, is because it's actually quite difficult for me tonight to wait until then, and that's part of the point. Like it's Ramadan tonight.
That's exactly the point, sir. And there are people who, like you, have childcare and other responsibilities. But that matter is listed on our agenda. You're welcome to come back.
Mr. Mayor, just with respect, different people's schedules are different, and
we're gonna move you to the general public spot and call Yvonne Trice. So Yvonne Trice is not here. Okay. John D. Janae Lennox, Anthony Manusos. Anthony Manusos would be the final speaker. *6 to unmute, Anthony. There you go.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can. 1 minute, 30 seconds. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, I'm Anthony Manusos. I'm a proud resident of Northwest Pasadena, and I like to give a shout out for rent control. Michelle White, Jill Shook, and Bert Newton campaigned for rent control 20 years ago. And now, thanks to an amazing campaign, we're finally seeing this get on the ballot. I'm glad that the public can speak out at the beginning of this meeting so we can talk about important issues like police reform and affordable housing. I'd like to make a comment about SB 9. First, I want to thank the mayor for deciding not to join a lawsuit with Torrance, Redondo Beach, Carson, and Whittier in opposing SB 9. I think SB 9 is a good law that will lower the cost of homes and make them more affordable to the missing middle. So I urge you to work with Attorney General Bonta to make sure that the city is in compliance with this law. The law exempts landmark districts, so I don't see why there would be a problem. There are 22 landmark districts covering a significant portion of the city. I support historic preservation, but I am concerned that these districts not be used to thwart the purpose of SB 9, which is to provide much needed lower cost housing. So please work with the Attorney General and not to try to come up with some kind of ordinance that will be in compliance with SB 9. Thank you so much for all that you do for affordable housing in our city.
Thank you. That completes public comment on matters not on the agenda.
Next, we'll move into the consent calendar. Before we do that, the city clerk has an announcement.
There are 3 changes to the consent calendar as the council prepares to motion. We do have speak cards on items 6 and 7, so we'll get to that. But for item 8, the resignation of Greg Goldman is effective. It will be effective May 1, 2022, and that's at the request of UCLA. So we got a late notice today. So when the motion's made, we're going to make that resignation effective May 1, 2022. Also under item 9A, the minutes for the closed session discussion will be amended to reflect the correct staff names. There were a couple of staff names that were incorrect on those minutes, so we will correct that. And then for item 9C, the public hearing setting for the recommended fiscal year 2023-2027 capital improvement program budget. The public hearing actually will be set for April 25th, 2022 at 5 p.m. And not May 2nd, April 25th, 2022 at 5 p.m. Those are requested amendments when the motion is made.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Is there a sweet motion?
So moved with the adjustments from the clerk.
And to hold out 6 and 7 because we
so
do have public comment.
Everything except for 6 and 7, so we can take the public comment.
Second.
Is moved by the Vice Mayor with the adjustments and seconded by Ms. Williams. Roll call on everything but 6 and 7.
And as amended. Councilmember Hampton is absent. Councilmember Kennedy?
Yes.
Councilmember Madison?
Yes.
Councilmember Masuda?
Yes.
Councilmember Rivas?
Yes.
Councilmember Williams?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wilson?
Yes.
Mayor Gordo?
Yes.
The motion is approved without opposition.
So starting with item 6, public comment.
I will read out the public comment letters received for items 6 and 7. Item 6, the city clerk's office received 3 letters in support of the local mobility analysis as proposed by the Department of Transportation and providing comments on the matter. The city clerk's office also received 5 letters in opposition expressing concerns with the staff recommendation that will not improve traffic or help with clogged intersections or help protect neighborhood streets. For item 7, 32 letters, including 1 letter representing 16 local organizations, were received by the city clerk in support of the city adopting an all-electric buildings code for new construction in Pasadena and providing comments related to clean air, fossil fuels, and climate change. 2 letters in support of the staff recommendation. 3 letters advocating for the city's electric building code to include single-family homes and accessory dwelling units. And 2 letters in opposition to the staff recommendation expressing concerns with potential unintended consequences. All correspondence was posted online, distributed to the city council, and is part of the record for these 2 items. The first speaker for item 6 is Nina Chomsky followed by Erica Foy, just submitted a speaker card. We'll get her checked in and call her next.
Ms. Chomsky?
Ms. Chomsky, you have a minute and 30 seconds. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I hope you can hear me. I'm baffled that this is a consent calendar item. It is of such importance that it should have a full staff report and a full discussion, which doesn't mean that anyone will understand it. I'm still trying to understand it all. It's almost incomprehensible. And I think that we really need to go over it, and we need to understand it in plain English, which is very difficult for this topic. We also need, as many of the letters and comments have said, we need to have the entire amount of the LLG material included in your resolution. And I would say, to make it more comprehensible and to understand the cumulative impacts of all this, that we should include a review of LOS, even if it isn't the legal standard for state law now to make decisions. It's for public understanding of that, of what's going on when we adopt new metrics, and also for cumulative impacts, as I said. And finally, though, this becomes a staff process that is obscure. How are we to follow up? How do we know if it works? How do we comparatively analyze it? When do we get reports? When do we get to review what the situation is? All we're going to do is come back in a while and say traffic is worse than ever. The intersections are worse than ever. This is good work, particularly by LLG. The administrative context is out of whack, and I think we need to look at this again and review it all.
Ms. Chomsky, your time
set
is
it up in a different way. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll call Erica Foy.
Ms. Foy?
Ms. Foy, 1 minute, 30 seconds. Go
Hi.
ahead. Hi.
Hi, thank you. I just want to say that I agree with Nina. It's just such an unbelievably complicated topic. I haven't participated in this kind of, process where it's actually creating, a new document. So there was some confusion on my end because I thought the local mobility analysis proposal that was attachment A was the actual document, which I thought was missing an incredible amount of material. But after speaking with Joaquin today, it is clear that they are going to proceed with all LLG's recommendations with your approval, with your okay this evening. And I absolutely feel that that should happen. This has been ongoing for so long, even though despite the topic is so incredibly dense and difficult to follow, I do think you should approve it because the LLG report is the most fantastic thing I've seen come out of the city in a very long time. So again, thank you for the confusion, but I hope you understand that this topic is just incredibly difficult to follow. But I hope it proceeds. Thank you so much.
Okay, for item 7, we'll call Blake Perez, followed by Vicky Kirschenbaum, followed by Nora Ames. Mr. Perez? Blake Perez?
Sorry, on you. Honorable Mayor, members of Pasadena City Council, I'm speaking on behalf of the Building Owners and Managers Association of Greater Los Angeles. We wanted to express our concern about the proposed electrification ordinance and unintended consequences will have on the economic health of the community. We believe building sustainable energy source is risky and not necessarily greener, especially given that Pasadena's own electric utility still obtains about 1/3 of its energy from an out-of-state coal plant. We believe the ordinance needs to be put in place before the infrastructure is ready. And we also have concerns about the retrofit requirement. It is wasteful and burdensome for our members, as written, it does not consider the remaining lifespan on the appliances that would need to be tossed out if the building were required to move to full electrification. And retrofit requirements make it more difficult for our members to make the investment necessary to attract and retain tenants in their buildings after facing the damage wrought by COVID. Finally, we believe this ordinance proposal would be more appropriate as amendment to the Buildings and Construction Code rather than the Health and Safety Code amendment. This is a significant policy change and something of this magnitude really needs the rigor and attention that the Building and Construction Code amendment requires. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Roxme, followed by Wes Rudiman, followed by Tom Brady.
Mr. Kennedy, we see your hand up.
Roxman, Mr. Michael?
Hi, my name is Michael Rockmus. I'm the volunteer chair of the Green Buildings Committee for Climate Reality Project Los Angeles chapter, and one of the facilitators of the Pasadena Building Electrification Coalition, which is a coalition of local groups, including environmental groups, faith groups, architects, and others, working together to build support for a strong building electrification policy for Pasadena. I want to thank the council for considering this all-electric new buildings policy and thank the staff for putting the proposal together. I appreciate the thought that went into the report and the timeline that's set out for implementation. Some of the arguments presented in the report include reducing greenhouse gas emissions in accordance with Pasadena's climate action plan, improving indoor air quality, which is particularly impactful for children's health, and improving safety and resilience during earthquakes, fires, or other disasters. I agree on all of these points and deeply appreciate the report. I do, however, want to discuss the exemption for single-family new construction and ADUs. As the report notes, most of the 50+ communities in California that have adopted all-electric new construction policies do include single-family homes and ADUs in their policies. There are 3 arguments in the report for making Pasadena an outlier on this point. First, the argument is to allow current property owners to choose the energy type that works for their needs. However, this policy is for new construction only, so it will primarily impact people who do not yet live in Pasadena, not the current residents. Second, to allow the category of housing to remain competitive.
Mr.
However, the
Rockmus,
housing-
your time has expired. Okay, and we will bring in, Wes is not here. So Tom Brady, followed by, well, Wes Rudiman's not in the meeting, so we'll go to Tom Brady, followed by Robert Ha, followed by Mary Mimi Fitzgerald. Mr. Brady, go ahead. 1 minute, 30 seconds. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you for the report. I support strongly the Pasadena Building Electrification Coalition statements. I actually am a resident of Pasadena with an all-electric home, which started with a lot of gas appliances and now got rid of gas. I also built an all-electric ADU in La Crescenta, and where adding gas would have been very expensive, and it doesn't make sense to exempt ADUs. Which really doesn't, because it's really very costly. So for all the reasons that are in the report, we really should adopt this. This is so consistent with the climate action plan. You're going to have a very hard time implementing any reductions for existing buildings. Building Association was obviously dealing with that question, not with new construction. So this is a minimal thing Pasadena needs to do, is at least to ban the gas in new construction, because existing buildings are something that we really should spend a lot of time on. But that's going to be the big nut to crack. In order to help preserve our climate, we need to act on these. Thank you very much.
So we'll move to Robert Ha, followed by Mimi Fitzgerald, followed by Althea Di Pietro. Mr. Ha?
Can you hear me?
We can. 1 minute, 30 seconds. Go ahead.
Okay. Good afternoon, Mayor Gordo and council members. Thank you for your time. I'm a consultant to high performance buildings, building design, and so this is an important measure for me, and so that's why I'm speaking up on it. So, just like everybody around the state and around the country, we here in Pasadena, we're not bystanders to the climate crisis. We are protagonists, like all of us. So I certainly applaud the commercial building electrification ordinance proposed by staff. It's necessary, but it's not sufficient, as we've heard some speakers already mention. So to show you're truly prioritizing climate action, I'd just like to make 2 brief points. 1, electrification has to happen citywide to all new and existing structures if it's to be meaningful. Otherwise, the measure is just greenwashing. And 2, fully electrified buildings will experience higher energy bills in the winter because electricity is more expensive than gas for heating. So to offset this cost increase, local building codes must be adjusted to reduce thermal energy demand. In other words, make a requirement to super insulate all buildings. Insulation is cheap. Thicker envelopes will have the added benefit of
Mr.
also
Ha, your
reducing
time has
emission
expired.
costs in the summer. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ha.
Mary Mimi Fitzgerald, followed by Althea DiPietro, followed by Claire Smeagle.
Ms. Fitzgerald?
I'm Mimi Fitzgerald. I have been a resident in a condo complex in Pasadena for 30 years, and I am now very much in favor of the electrification of all buildings, not just commercial buildings. My own condo is not that old, it's less than 40 years old, and I had to go to some expense to make sure that I could use an electric stove because it is cleaner and less polluting for me and my grandchildren. I want to make sure that you understand that making policy at the city level is really important, especially for people like me who have to put my my own windows in, double pane windows in against the wishes of the condo community that I live in. So I would like to have the support of the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fitzgerald. Althea DiPietro, followed by Claire Smeagle. Hope I'm pronouncing that name right. Followed by Sanford Krasner. Ms. DiPietro?
Good evening, Council. Yes, good evening, Council members. I'm Althea DiPietro, and as a commercial building owner, I would like to address the proposed building electrification ordinance. Enforcing a law where an entire building would have to convert to complete electrification is a wasteful and costly proposition. Perfectly good equipment that uses natural gas would have to be replaced and thrown away. The city of Pasadena also needs to think about how this additional electricity will be generated. Currently, the city's electricity is generated from coal, natural gas, and renewable sources. Since this ordinance would require more electricity, there is the concern that it would be more taxing on the grid. Also, unless the electricity is supplied 100% by renewable sources, there will be a need to generate the additional electricity from more fossil fuels, such as coal, rather than allowing a cleaner energy source, such as natural gas, to continue to be used. These issues need to be thoroughly reviewed before simply proceeding with such requirements. As constituents, we should be provided with comprehensive studies as to how this decision is reached, since it has such large ramifications on businesses and residents in Pasadena. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. We'll call on Claire Smeagle. Apologies again if I'm mispronouncing your name. Followed by Sanford Krasner and then Vicky Kirschenbaum. Claire?
Hi, you can hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay, my name is Claire Smeagle. I'm a physician specializing in allergy and immunology. I primarily treat patients with allergies and asthma. I live in Silver Lake, but I work full-time in Pasadena. I want to start by thanking the council. So climate change is a very real, very overwhelming issue. I think most people feel too small in the face of climate change. They see that our individual actions will not do anything. We need policy change. This is an undeniable fact, and it takes changing our laws and regulations. The mayor and the council today have that power to make a significant change to the Pasadena city law, which will actually make a large difference in reducing key forces, which are greenhouse gases, driving climate change. Electrification of buildings is not only a no-brainer to fight climate change, but it has so many rippling effects. for good policy. The evidence is clear, electrifying buildings is cost effective. Not only are individual homes and larger buildings cheaper to construct, but the energy use is more efficient, will save money in the long term. When it comes to the health of individuals, that's where people will reap the most benefits. Gas stoves, they leak particulate matter, nitrogen dioxide, carbon monoxide, methane, and formaldehyde. They do this both when they're actively on and when they are turned off as well. Methane, which is also called natural gas, is a greenhouse gas that is 87 times more potent than carbon dioxide. Large quantities are released in the extraction and transport of natural gas, and methane is a precursor to ozone smog. So a 2013 meta-analysis, and for those who don't know, a meta-analysis in the hierarchy of scientific evidence is the most trustworthy source of evidence. They
Excuse
looked at
me,
41 studies and showed that
your
ozone
time,
gas shows 42% higher asthma symptoms and 24% increased risk of being diagnosed with asthma.
your time has expired. Okay, we will move on to Sanford Krasner, followed by Vicky Kirschenbaum, followed by Nora Ames. Sanford?
Yes, hello, this is Sanford Krasner. Can you hear me okay?
We can. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. I'm the group leader for the Pasadena chapter of the Citizens Climate Lobby. I'd like to thank you very much for allowing me to speak. I want to speak out strongly in favor of the building electrification ordinance. I want to point out that natural gas is sort of the low-hanging, easiest, eliminating natural gas is sort of the low-hanging, easiest solution to addressing climate change. Natural gas, once we stop emitting, it comes out of the atmosphere fairly quickly. As Claire pointed out, it's a very potent greenhouse gas, but it's removed from the atmosphere fairly quickly. So if we stop emitting climate gas, natural gas, we'll have a very immediate, very fast effect on climate change. In response to some of the comments that were made before, I want to point out that this ordinance does not require retrofitting or eliminating of existing equipment. It only requires eliminating natural gas for new construction. I also want to point out that as the electrical supply becomes more and more renewable as required by the state, the electrical power used to replace natural gas will become cleaner and cleaner. So I want to urge very strongly that you go ahead and pass this ordinance. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Vicky Kirschenbaum, followed by Nora Ames, followed by Ryan Bell, followed by Greg Apodaca. Ms. Kirschenbaum? Ms. Kirschenbaum? All right, we'll move on to Nora Ames, followed by Ryan Bell. Nora fell off. We'll go to Ryan Bell. Ryan, you have 1 minute, 30 seconds. Go ahead.
Thank you, Council. It's kind of auspicious that this comes up, and I'm glad it is. I'm totally in support of this electrification ordinance. Today, yesterday and today, we heard this remarkable news from the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, calling the evidence a file of shame, and definitely saying that the world is on track for catastrophic levels of warming that's going to affect all of us. So my comment tonight is in support of the ordinance, but that it really needs to include all new construction, and frankly, it needs to go beyond that at some point. I suppose eventually manufacturers will simply stop making gas ranges and stuff, but I think single-family homes and ADUs have to be included in this. I don't understand why you would exclude those. And the 50% limit on commercial buildings being expanded also seems perhaps a little high. And I would encourage the council to consider including more buildings and in this ordinance before it's officially finalized. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We're going to bring back in Vicky Kirschenbaum Ms. Kirschenbaum, it's *6 to unmute. There you go. Are you there? Ms. Kirschenbaum?
Oh, no.
Hello? All right, we'll move on to Nora. No, Nora. Oh, I hear you. Ms. Kirschenbaum, are you there?
I don't know.
We can hear you. If you want to start your comments, you have 1 minute, 30 seconds. Go ahead. She can't hear me. Okay. All right. Greg Apodaca, followed by Carl Seckham, followed. It's S-E-K-I-M. Seckham? Carl Seckham.
Can you hear me there?
Yeah, Greg, go ahead.
Great, thanks very much. I'd like to say thanks to the council for considering this action on building electrification, and I urge you to go as far as you possibly can. I want to speak just briefly to the bigger picture, which is the climate emergency and the urgent and bold action needed to mitigate the impending damage. On August 9th, 2021, the UN Secretary General said that the climate emergency was nothing less than code red for humanity. We went on to say that the alarm bells are deafening and the evidence is irrefutable. The only way to prevent the worst damage is by urgently stepping up our efforts and pursuing the most ambitious path possible. So we can do something about this. It's not too late, but we must take bold action, not half measures. I would encourage you to not only pass the agenda item that you have here today, but that you go even further and include the ADUs and the go as far as you can with respect to buildings, both commercial and residential. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you. We'll move on to Carl Seckham, S-E-K-I-M. No, it's Carl Selkin.
Hi.
We thought it might be you. 1 minute, 30 seconds. Go ahead.
Well, I hope it is. If not, I'll pretend. So thank you very much, the mayor and members of the city council and Pasadena staff for coming up with an excellent proposal for building electrification, which is needed as we build for the future, not try to maintain the past. This is a difficult transition, in many cases an expensive one, but in the long term, it's cost saving, efficient, and necessary. Nobody's ever fought wars over solar and wind energy, but we see a war now in Europe over natural gas, over methane. And that has been a history of fossil fuels for many, many years, as we all know. So let's move beyond that, because it's a matter actually of life and death in many different ways. I would like to recommend or second everything people have said in terms of going even further than this ordinance would, but at least move away from giving blanket exemptions to special uses, but require that anybody trying, or any organization or any business trying to be exempt have to make an argument for that exemption. So thank you very much again. And this is tough, it's expensive, and it's a major transition, but it's absolutely necessary for us, Pasadena.
Thank you, Mr. Selkin. Your time expired. Kathy Berlin, followed by Cynthia Canati, followed by Christy Zamani. Go ahead.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead, Ms. Berlin.
Thank you. And I would like to thank the staff, Mayor Gordo, and the City Council for considering this really well-reasoned and well-written report from the staff regarding building electrification ordinance. We all know we're in a climate emergency. We all know the signs. Summer's coming up. The signs will just be worse. We must reduce our greenhouse gas emissions as soon as possible. By including ADUs and single-family homes in this building electrification ordinance, you will show that Pasadena is serious about reducing greenhouse gas emissions and protecting the health and safety of the residents. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Berlin. Cynthia Canati, followed by Christy Zamani, followed by Kimberly Orb.
Good evening.
Hi, 1 minute, 30 seconds. Go ahead.
Yeah, good evening. Cynthia Kennedy. I'm a Pasadena resident. I'm speaking to support a strong building electrification ordinance with no exceptions because of the climate crisis, but also I'd particularly like to address the public health effects of gas. Gas is linked to cancer and respiratory illnesses, especially pediatric asthma. According to a recent Stanford study, children in homes with gas are 42% more likely to have asthma. That's pretty shocking. According to the EPA, Black children are twice as likely to have asthma, regardless of family income. In Pasadena, Black children are 6 times more likely than white children to be admitted to emergency rooms for asthma. So we have to take these things into account, these realities about gas and what it causes. And looking at this ordinance, I'm particularly concerned about the less than 50% exception, which seems very easy to avoid. And this could subject children to continued toxic gas exposure. So thank you for listening. I do appreciate the planning department's excellent original proposal.
Thank you. We'll move on to Christy Zamani, followed by Kimberly Orb, followed by Catherine Ronan.
Hello?
Hi, Christy. 1 minute, 30 seconds.
Dear Mayor Gordo and members of the City Council, I speak to you tonight as both a local resident that cares about clean air and a more sustainable Pasadena, and as the Executive Director of Day One, an agency with a 35-year history of advocating for a better community. In both capacities, I strongly support the adoption of an all-electric building code for all new construction. Being a healthy, vibrant green city is a priority for Pasadena and its residents. There are a number of benefits to public health, public safety, and the environment. It's really simple. If we know better, we should do better. We know that a majority of the new ADUs and constructions will be filled by renters. As is, renters have few say and protections in the buildings that they live in. It's our job to advance equitable progress that cares for the most marginalized members of our community. Moving from gas to electric is an easy move. All electric buildings mean better air quality and less outdoor air pollution. Who doesn't want that? 54 communities across California have already adopted a local building electrification code. Let's add Pasadena to the list. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Kimberly Orby, Orb. *6 to unmute. There you go. Kimberly, can you hear us?
Hello, can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you. Thank you. 1 minute, 30 seconds. Go
perfect.
ahead.
Great, thank you. Hello, everyone. Hello, Pasadena City Council members. My name is Kimberly Orbe. I'm here representing the Sierra Club, the Angeles chapter. As someone who cares about the climate and environmental justice, I strongly support the adoption of an all-electric building code for new construction in Pasadena. As you all probably know, Southern California has some of the worst air pollution in the United States, from gas leaks, from storage facilities like Aliso Canyon, from power plants, from old pipes, from our stoves. It leaks outside our homes. It leaks inside our homes. Everywhere it leaks, it pollutes the air that we breathe. And polluted air has a devastating impact on the health of our communities, and leads to respiratory illnesses, cognitive impairments, and even cancer. And now with COVID on top of all of this, children and older adults are particularly at more risk. So we all deserve clean, breathable air, and it should not be a privilege. It's a right that we should all be entitled to. All electric buildings have better indoor quality and are healthier for people who live in them. As the state moves towards creating a clean electric grid as required by law, building electrification will play a major role in addressing air pollution and climate change in our region. Per Pasadena City's baseline data, fossil fuels from gas buildings account for 36% of residential emissions in Pasadena. An investment now in decarbonization of buildings is an investment in public health. Making the construction of healthier gas-free homes a reality isn't difficult. An all-electric leach code is one of the most cost-effective, timely, and impactful actions a city can take to reduce indoor and outdoor air pollution. Pasadena has a real opportunity to improve the health and safety of homes and buildings by supporting an all-electric building code update. A strong building decarb ordinance will move Pasadena one
Thank
step
you.
closer
Your
to
time
improving
has
cleaner air
expired.
for all residents. Thank you, City Council members.
Thank you. Catherine Ronan, followed by Winston Thorne, followed by Deandre Valencia. Ms. Ronan?
Hi, my name is Catherine. Sorry.
Are you able to fix that?
Yeah. How do I do that?
We'll put you back in and call you in a second. We'll move on to.
My name is Catherine Ronan. I'm
Okay.
calling in on behalf of the Sierra Club Angeles Chapter Climate Action Team. Here in California, we're beginning to transition our housing off of reliance on natural gas for cooking and heating to all electric at the same time that we are moving our electric grid to renewable sources of energy. All electric homes are healthier for us and better for our climate. In our homes, exposure to natural gas contributes to asthma and other respiratory diseases. It also contributes to ozone and smog as well, of course, our existential crisis, climate change. Other drawbacks to gas are its flammability, and its cost is highly variable, as we have seen with our greatly increased gas bills this past winter. In new construction, all electric has been found to be less expensive than gas. An all-electric code update for new construction will contribute to healthier homes and improved air quality in our region. We would very much like to see the proposal by city staff strengthened to include single-family homes and ADUs, which are natural candidates for all electric and a logical place to start. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll move on to Winston Thorne, followed by Deandre Valencia.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, City Council, and staff for your report and preparation for requiring the electrification of buildings in certain specific categories to be more inclusive. I live in Pasadena, and I'm a licensed architect in California. I would like Council's proposed electrification requirements to acknowledge or consider the following. Because a low percentage of new resident units are added or rebuilt every year, electrification via this ordinance will result in a slow, incremental growth in Pasadena's electric demand. All electric buildings are better for the built environment. Electrification is economically viable for a wider demographic. I'd also like to encourage ADUs, 1 to 3 dwelling units, and extensive remodels to be included in the updated ordinance. We don't want to slow down the adoption and implementation of this policy, but I would urge the City Council to either ask staff to include single-family homes, ADUs, to this policy within the same time frame, or ask staff to move forward with the first proposal and then come back with a separate proposal for single-family homes and ADUs to be implemented by January 1st, 2023. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. The last speaker on this item is Deandre Valencia.
Hi, good evening, and thank you. Deandre Valencia with the Building Industry Association of Southern California, representing the Los Angeles Ventura County chapter. First of all, I just want to say thank you to staff, specifically Ronald Takiguchi. He reached out to us in regards to this ordinance and was able to work with the business community to make sure our input was heard. Even though we agree with the state's goals of decarbonization, we understand that these types of ordinances need to be implemented in phases that would allow our development community to adapt to these new rules. And because of that, I would like to request that this ordinance does not be implemented until January 1, 2023. That will align with the county as well as the City of LA's ordinances. Secondarily, I would like to express our concern on the process of this ordinance being passed through the Health and Safety Code versus the California Energy Commission's off-cycle building update or code update. We think that's the correct process for this to go through. In regards to some comments made on the call, I would strongly urge the City Council not to extend this to single-family housing. We're already in an affordable as well a housing crisis, and adding $1,000 on top to a house will exclude about 1,200 families. So we need to build housing fast, quickly, in an expeditious way without adding additional burden.
Thank you, Mr.
So with
Valencia.
that,
Your
I thank
time.
you for everything, and thank you for the day.
Thank you. Your time has expired, and that completes public comment on item on the consent calendar.
Thank you. On item 7, that matter went through Municipal Services Committee, and so I'll look to the chair of that committee to add any other information or move the matter if we're prepared to do so. Before we do that, Mr. Kennedy has had his hand up, and so I'll look to Mr. Kennedy first and then turn back to.
Mayor, I support the process you just outlined, and I'd be happy to speak after the chair of the committee.
Okay.
I'd like to
Thank
be
you, Mr.
supportive.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Madison?
Mayor, if you prefer to have the chair address us first, I
What?
can certainly defer.
Why don't we do that? Mr. Wilson,
Thank
back
you,
to
but I
you.
will keep my hand up till after that.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Mayor, we're taking 6 first and then 7.
Yeah, you want to move 6?
I did want to ask the staff, so this did come through MSC, as you said, Mayor. We had a lengthy discussion, and we were very supportive of staff recommendation. There were 4 questions that came up in MSC that are outlined in a memo. I would ask that, Amor, if you could walk us through those responses. I think that would be helpful because those were kind of outstanding for us.
Both of the matters went, 6
They
and
did.
7 went through, and so
Correct.
you're referring specifically to item 6.
I'm starting off at 6. I thought
Okay,
we
got
would
it.
take that and then go to 7 since we are independent.
Sure, and I'll actually ask Joaquin Seekers, Deputy Director, to summarize the contents of the memo, responding to comments made at MSC.
Mr. Seekers, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Gordo and council members. There were 4 items that were identified at MSC, and included in attachment C to the agenda report is a thorough response on each of those items. And I'll go quickly through all 4 to summarize the responses. The first was a request for the city staff to evaluate the ability to upgrade the intersectional level of service from an LOSD to an LOSD from an LOSE. And as noted in the response, the city's current guidelines state that the level of service cap for signalized intersections within a TOD is an LOSE. And this is intended to be in place because TODs are areas that are intended by design to be areas of higher pedestrian activity in order to promote the use of walking and bicycling in these areas. And the needs of pedestrian, bicyclists, and other vulnerable roadway users must be included in the intersection design and operations. In 2014, when this item was originally identified and discussed at Planning Commission, there was a good discussion on the topic of why an LOS at a TOD versus an LOSD. And we identified that a change.
Mayor, are you aware that the speaker is going in and out in terms of audibility?
If you can speak into the microphone, Joaquin, I think we can hear you okay, but it seems virtually they're having problems hearing you. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy, for pointing that out.
Thank you, Councilmember Kandi. In respect to the change from LOSE to LOSD, it was described that any change in LOSD would ignore the intentional differences and the specific characteristics of the intended design of a transit-oriented district. We concluded that because these intersections, which are designed to proactively address the safety and comfort of pedestrians, often require operational changes to reduce or eliminate conflicts with turning vehicles, which result in a larger portion of the traffic signal cycle dedicated to providing appropriate pedestrian clearance intervals phasing, that typically leads to a longer delay at the intersections, which is how we get that LOSE. At the same time, we want to ensure that the intersection is designed appropriately to accommodate pedestrians and bicyclists while managing that trade-off in the delay to traffic. And we do recommend that the LOSE be maintained as a vehicular LOS threshold for intersections within a TOD. The second item that was raised was the ability to use the empirical data for internal capture in mixed-use projects as opposed to the ITE trip generation manual. And the use of empirically derived trip generation data may be appropriate for certain land uses which are not contained in the ITE trip generation manual, or for land uses that have small sample sizes within the trip generation manual. Should empirical data be used by an applicant for the traffic analysis, we would require supporting documentation for any empirically derived trip generation data to be submitted to DOT for approval as part of the transportation study process. The third item that was identified, or a question that was asked, was if staff could evaluate if there's a way to combine the neighborhood intrusion cut-through traffic analysis with traffic investigations to look at addressing potential problems on a more proactive basis. And the local mobility analysis guidelines will include a component for neighborhood intrusion and cut-through traffic analysis. And the consultant will be developing the analysis for each development will conduct detailed observations and surveys at the specific study locations for the selected analysis. These include conducting a site visit and surveys, collecting counts, and really identifying if there's any concerns or any issues in the operations or safety of those locations. This process is very similar to the traffic investigation process conducted by city staff for existing conditions. So in summary, the local mobility analysis does include a component very similar to traffic investigations. It's just not labeled as such. Separate from the local mobility analysis, traffic investigations can also be initiated by the Department of Transportation when a request is submitted or received from the public for any existing and observable condition. So this is an existing and ongoing process separate from the local mobility analysis, but it can be conducted for any location at any time. And the last item that was asked was a question to clarify what triggers active transportation improvements. And you'll see in the thresholds that there is no quantifiable threshold applicable for the active transportation trigger. And a threshold is not specifically recommended since the assessment is based on a qualitative review of active transportation elements within the project vicinity. The transportation assessment identifies whether there are any existing deficiencies along a project's frontage, and the transportation assessment should also evaluate the potential for the project to result in either the removal or degradation of existing facilities, or an increase in the demand where the facilities are missing or not to current standards. If such deficiencies do exist, an applicant may be required to construct such measures as a formal condition of approval. That's a summary of the 4 responses.
Thank you, Joaquin. I appreciate the additional diligence. As said, MSC was supportive of this change and once again found the LLG report to be, I think, very well done and very thoughtful. I do think, as some of the commenters mentioned, first of all, there was a question about LOS being removed, and it is still part of the metrics that are measured. So I think we should have the record reflect that, in that the LLG report is in its entirety not necessarily captured in the table of performance, but will be captured, I think, in the handbook. Or how do we explain how some of these details will be captured?
Vice Mayor Wilson, they will be captured as part of the guidelines. So every recommendation in the LLG report becomes part of the guidelines that will be published, if approved today, within 30 days of the resolution.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Once again,
Thank
we're
you.
supportive. We appreciate the follow-up and the clarity.
Thank you. Let's turn to Mr. Kennedy, followed by Mr. Madison, and then I see Ms. Williams is in the queue as well.
My comments, questions, Mayor, are related to item 7, please.
Okay, we'll come back to that then. Mr. Madison, were you on 6 or 7?
7 also, Mayor.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Williams?
Oh, thank you. So we did review this at MSC, and I really have to give kudos to the staff for really listening and working through. This is a really, really complex issue. And then even if it's not kudos, it's brownies to the public that took the time to understand this issue and really come with great recommendations. So the LLG recommendations are great. Happy to support this. I supported it at MSC. I am going to push for to lose the LOSE and move it up to an LOSD in TOD areas. I think that's a really big deal. We should not have poorly functioning intersections where pedestrians are present, because I believe that presents a danger to them. So I'm still going to probably push for that later, but this is just really a great job of implementing the comments and answering the questions and being very responsive. Thank
Yeah.
you.
This has been a long time in the making, as we all know. And so I'm pleased also to see that we are looking for ways to address the issues that have been raised by residents, members of the council, and others. And so thank you. It's a great piece of work. Okay, is that a motion?
I'm prepared to move the staff recommendations. I will include Councilmember Williams' request that we move the LOS from a E to a D in TODs.
I think, were you going to make that today or I think
Well,
it's
I don't think
it's-
that's a motion. I think it's something that we should continue to.
Yeah,
Fair
I
enough.
think,
I
I think
withdraw
it's
that.
something, I
I'll
think
move
the
the staff
intent was to come back with it. This is a great starting place, and then we come back.
So
I'll
let-
second
I want to
that.
make sure you get what you're hoping for in terms of next steps. So staff's done a great job. So once again, I'm happy to support this and move this. Felicia, what are you hoping for in terms of that? You want like something to come back at some point or?
Well, I hope if we do an evaluation
Yeah.
of sort of how the implementation has
Right.
worked, we could revisit it at that point.
Yeah.
So that was one question from the public. Is there a point in time where we're going to evaluate the impacts of the changes?
So I think, so this goes into effect 90 days after approval from this body. What we'd like to do generally is to have the new guidelines in place for enough time for us to gather that data. We're happy to provide a report back at least 1 year out so that we
Yeah.
have enough projects that have gone through this process and can do a comparison.
So perfect, MSC a year out.
Perfect.
Great.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So that's more direction to staff.
Thanks,
I
Amy.
won't be here for that. So
No objection from the chair of MSC.
so moved as proposed
Second.
in the staff report.
Great. So it's moved and seconded. Again, congratulations, Ms. Cornejo, Mr. Seeks. Good work. We'll see you in a year.
Roll call. Roll call.
I'm sorry, roll call.
Councilmember Hampton is absent. Councilmember Kennedy,
Yes,
Councilmember Madison,
Yes.
Councilmember Masuda, Councilmember Masuda, not here. Councilmember Rivas,
Yes.
Councilmember Williams,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wilson,
Yes.
Mayor Gordo.
Yes.
The motion is approved without opposition.
Great, thank you. And item 7.
Yes, Mayor, this too went through MSC, as you mentioned. We do think this is a very important action with respect to climate change. And we had a lengthy conversation. It was still a little bit of work in process, so I don't think that we took, if I recall, formal vote from MSC on this item. I know, once again, conceptually, MSC's believe this is the right thing to do. I had some questions about whether new construction for single family and ADUs should be included. So I'm eager to see what my colleagues have to say. Those were discussion points, and I'm quite sure if memory recalls, we didn't take a formal vote on this. It was more of a, here's where we're going. We provided feedback. Very important change to our code. So eager to see where the conversation goes today.
Okay. Mr. Kennedy, followed by Mr. Madison.
thank you very much, Mayor. First of all, I'd like to thank all of the speakers who spoke passionately about this particular issue. It is a critical issue for not only Pasadena State, but really the world. And we just do our small part here in the city of Pasadena related to the electrification of buildings in certain specific categories. First of all, I'd just like to ask staff about City of Morgan Hill. If I have this right on page 4, it says that there was $7,000 lower cost per unit in construction. Is that accurate in terms of your research?
Good evening, Mayor Gordo, City Council members, Ron Takiguchi, City Building Official, Department of Planning and Community Development. Councilmember Kennedy, thank you very much for your question. And our research for Morgan Hill is accurate as per the staff report.
Well, that's fantastic, and hopefully if we move this matter forward tonight with any minor modifications, we'll realize similar savings in the city of Pasadena. It's no secret that natural gas, in terms of infrastructure in the city of Pasadena, but all across the county, is under impact because the infrastructure is just simply so old, and it's difficult to repair. I remember on the street that I grew up that all of the piping had to be changed out, and it seems like every home that my brother or sister, et cetera, or family friend has, that they're replacing pipe that is old and antiquated. I'm understanding from staff that if in fact we move in the direction as contemplated, that repairs would be much easier. Is that correct, Ms. Takaguchi?
That's correct. If we consider a building electrification ordinance, it is easier to repair, in my experience, the electrical systems as it is gas because of the circuit routing within a building. And there are many measures in place that the state is proposing to make buildings electric ready to make this, to further the goal of building electrification.
Fantastic. And then I noticed that, I think rightly so, in terms of a measured step to get us in a better place, that we are, believe, excluding restaurants from this ordinance. Is that also accurate?
That is correct. Staff considered what should be applicable, and upon hearing from the community and especially businesses here in Pasadena, we did eliminate, or excuse me, we did not require restaurants and food services from electrification. That, of course, is up to the restaurateur or the the food service, say it's a chain, to opt for them to use electric equipment if they wish. But if they wish to use natural gas for the type of food preparation consistent with their food service, that is certainly their option.
Thank you very much. And then also, in terms of the stakeholder groups, there seemingly was some concern as it relates to the minimum threshold of being 3 units in terms of the applicability of the ordinance, and some strong view that there should be a move instead of 3 to 4 units. Can you tell us briefly what those discussions were?
Yes, as you saw from the input from the stakeholders, there's opinions that including multifamily at 4 units or more, that it may affect the mom and pop type multifamily owners. And staff greatly considered that, and it has a relationship to what's in the building code, because at 4 units, there are a lot of things in the building code for higher measures of safety. So we took the thresholds that are already existing in the state building code.
And so is it the position of staff that you would have no problem related to 4 as opposed to 3 units?
That's correct, sir.
Thank you very much. And then does staff have a inordinately strong view in terms of the implementation schedule to move it to January 2023, consistent with the state of California, the city of Los Angeles, and possibly the county of Los Angeles?
Well, we certainly could consider that as per directed. We are recommending in our staff report July 1st to quickly capture as much as we can any development that might come in on July 1st or after. Certainly, we could be consistent with the state building code, which is the new state building code, which is effective January 1st, 2023. as mentioned by some of the stakeholders. And if we did that, we'd have to consider what we might lose in that interim. But at the same time, will be consistent with the state with some of the measures for new single-family dwelling, electric-ready construction measures.
So just to be clear, no overriding concerns, Mr. Takaguchi?
No, other than our capture. We wanted to capture it as soon as possible. July 1st is our recommendation, but if we held it off for 6 months, we can certainly work and have further outreach. Developers and building owners could prepare in that further time frame.
Okay. So what I would recommend, and hopefully for the sake of further discussion from my colleagues, even if we modify the staff's recommendations further, I'd like to move staff's recommendation in terms of the preparation of an ordinance amending Chapter 8 of the Pasadena Municipal Code requiring the electrification of buildings in certain specific categories and include in that recommendation of movement of applicability from 3 units to 4 units based upon the concerns and input of the stakeholders.
Mr. Kennedy, it is at 4, and before we make a motion, why don't we let everyone speak and then we can see where we find ourselves. I think in fairness to everyone should have an opportunity to give comments prior to making the motion, if that's okay with you.
It's acceptable, but it's also, just for the record, also acceptable to make a motion and then that the colleagues would have an opportunity to impact that motion, but I defer to the chair.
Sure. I'll turn to you. Let's hear from Mr. Reyes. You can just, Mr. Reyes, we'll have the microphone brought over to you.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council. Just in response to the last question about lining up with the state, the county, and potentially the city of Los Angeles. I think the issue that we have is that our ordinance is ready to go. At the state level, they're only going to have the requirement that these projects be electric ready and not actually full electrification. So we don't know what the county's going to do. We don't know exactly. I've not seen the LA ordinance. And I would just say that from our perspective, while alignment is good, at this point, we are moving at the Pasadena pace. And I think to delay beyond July 1st would not necessarily get us anything in terms of aligning with some other ordinances that we don't know what they're going to say.
Okay. Got it. Thank you. Ms. Rivas, I'm sorry, Mr. Madison, followed by Ms. Rivas.
Thank you, Mayor. I too applaud this, although I do have some concerns, both kind of procedural and substantive. I guess the first is procedural. I would just note, this is not the kind of matter that should be on a consent calendar. I mean, this is a substantial policy initiative by the city of Pasadena. And I just respectfully, I hope I'm not being unduly critical here. I think as the number of speaker cards indicated, this is, I think, perhaps more in terms of scope than a consent calendar item. Procedurally, this comes from the building department. Has our water and power weighed in on this at all?
They are aware that, we actually have someone from Power here. This was the city manager, but I'll let Mr. Moon speak. I didn't realize you were
it's
here.
just a simple, it's just a yes or no question.
Yes, sir.
I didn't see anything. I didn't see anything in the staff report about that. So do we have a report from the utility?
We don't have a report from the utility, but they have coordinated with the building department, been a part of it, and I've spoken with the general manager about it several times. And I take back to your first question. I was a bit surprised by the number of speakers this evening. I fully take responsibility for not realizing that it would be as much discussion as it was since it had gone through committee. I expected it to be more routine than clearly it is, and we will be careful. It should have been listed under city manager.
I quite appreciate that, and I too would err on the side of consent if we can manage the consent calendar, as well as we have been lately. But you say it comes through committee, but I don't see a committee vote on this or a recommendation from the committee.
They had
What-
given us
what-
general concept approval. We spoke about taking it back through the committee again, but with the implementation date that we were recommending, we chose to bring it here. They did not see all the specifics in the preparation of an ordinance that we're recommending this evening.
So so we have a clear record, we don't have a committee recommendation about the ordinance before us.
As chair of MSC, that's correct.
Okay, I think that should happen. I also, it doesn't appear that this went to the Environmental Advisory Commission. And if this doesn't go to EAC, I don't know why we have an EAC. Am I right about that, that it didn't go to the EAC?
Did this?
Yeah, I mean, that should just be mandatory for any initiative like this that purports to fulfill our climate change initiative. Substantively, one concern I have is there a requirement that the electrification aspect of this be limited to non-coal and natural gas burning power?
No, that's not part of the recommendation that's before you this evening. Now, we
Well,
are
basically,
moving
what
our
I'm-
utility. Whoops,
Yeah, I'm
my
sorry.
apologies. In our direction, that direction, so we see those as aligning. But with the implementation schedule that we're recommending, that we will still be vested in some fossil fuel and coal. We will not have brought our utility totally off of those sources at the time that we would begin asking buildings to go fully electric.
Yeah, and that's a problem for me. I mean, that's again why I bet if we had sent this to the EAC, they would have asked those questions. Because really, when we're talking about things like carbon footprints, I mean, if all we're doing is moving our residents over from natural gas to electricity that's fueled by natural gas, that's a different sort of impression from what maybe people are getting from this. And my final comment, Mayor, and thank you for giving me this much time, but I just don't know why we then carve out. I mean, if there's a policy-based reason to require electrification, I don't know why we would carve out certain homes from that. I get the restaurant. I think that's an important part of our local economy. And frankly, I just think natural gas is an essential element. But in terms of our overall usage, I don't know if we have data. Do we have data in front of us about what percentage is residential versus commercial, and of commercial, what percentage is restaurants?
Because we were looking at new construction, we looked at what new construction in town primarily is, and that is the multifamily buildings. So we thought we would capture what is happening in Pasadena now. This is a first step into electrification. People spoke about residential, single family, and ADUs tonight. And after looking at the steps needed to implement this, we decided that we should take it in a phased approach where we would capture the most of the new buildings that are happening in town, but not take on more than we can accommodate with our own staffing and our inspectors and getting used to it. We can come back to single family later. Vice Mayor Wilson asked about ADUs. That was looked at, but the question of requiring something on ADUs that we're not recommending on single family, we thought would get us into a position where the state might intervene because they have put a lot more regulations on ADUs. So at the time we would look at single family, we would look at ADU at the same time. So really, we intend to do that. It is a phased approach, but we didn't want to take on more than we thought we could do well.
Thank you. And am I correct? Sometimes we have mandates from the state that we have to adopt rules and regulations. Is this that sort of case? Like, are we required to adopt this by a date certain?
No, they're looking at electrification, and I'd really look to our building official or our planning director on status of legislation, but they have not adopted anything that's similar to this as of this point. Ron or David, could you add more to that?
Yeah, if I may, thank you very much, City Manager Kurtz. Councilmember Madison, staff would come back to City Council later this year for the new 2022 state building codes. And it only partially includes requirements for electrification, mostly in the realm of single family and ADUs for electric readiness for those new single family and new ADUs. So like the city manager mentioned, it is a first step, and we want to be consistent with what the state is rolling out, as they have in the past with solar photovoltaics. And we expect that the state, in their directions with the state's climate action plan, that electrification would only increase over the years. But starting in January, it will be a first step.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I'm not going to be in a position to support this tonight. I think it needs to go to EAC and get the benefit of that input. It needs to go back to MSC, and we need to have a full report from the Water and Power so that our residents and businesses get a clear view of what the impact really is on the carbon footprint. And then I think for me, it's going to be a stretch to exempt single family homes from this. I think if we're going to take that on, we shouldn't, sort of do the proverbial frog in the pot of tepid water and then just turn up the heat. We need to be clear with people about where we're headed. And my guess is we'd get more community input on both sides probably at that point. But thank you very much.
Mr. Madison, just so we're clear, your suggestion that this go to the utility, what are the issues that you'd like the utility to address?
Well, they're in the business of providing electricity. I would want to know what their projections are about the demand that it would create, about pricing for working families in terms of the costs of heating and cooking and heating their water. I'd want to know what the answer to my questions about the carbon footprint. I think they would have something to say about projected sources of electricity and what it really means, so that we can make a more fully informed decision about it. Again, to me, it's not even a close call. I don't know how we'd consider something like this without having a full report from our own Water and Power about all those issues. And I think, worst case, we could be accused of trying to move business over from the gas company to our own utility under false pretenses if the carbon footprint data really doesn't bear it out.
I'm wondering if a middle ground, because we're not moving to implement until July 1st. It might be a good idea to maybe proceed, and with the understanding that it goes to MSC for further review and then come back for any adjustments that might be needed. But try and stick to the current timeline, or at least give us an opportunity to meet the current timeline. I'll look to.
Well, that's why I asked if the timeline was mandated, and it's not.
No.
So I would be opposed to sort of ready, fire, aim. I think we should do this the right way. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Ms. Rivas?
Thank you, Mayor. And I want to start by thanking staff for their initiative in bringing this to us. First at MSC a couple months back. Back at MSC, I advocated advocated in favor for being as inclusive as possible with our ordinance, or rather minimizing the number of exclusions. And that's because of the climate emergency we find ourselves in, unfortunately. Understandably, that shift away from natural gas to electric buildings will be costly, and as several of the public commenters pointed out. But in my mind, the way to do it, the easy way to do it, or the lowest hanging fruit to attack first, is with new construction. And so I absolutely support this item, and I think we should move on it tonight if possible. But I personally would prefer that it include new construction, single-family homes, new multifamily units consisting of 2 to 3 units, and also new ADUs. If anything, it's going to make construction of those units, those new units, less expensive, as the staff report pointed out. But I do understand, as the city manager pointed out, they're kind of doing a phased approach, so I don't want to hold up this from moving forward. So I would be in favor of moving forward with the staff report and continuing to look at what else we can add through the coming months. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson, followed by Mr. Masuda.
Thank you, Mayor. And as I mentioned, we did not make a recommendation because it was still a work in process. So I think Councilmember Madison is correct in the sense that there was a desire to get these new requirements in place. There's real benefit, and I would caution the infrastructure that's being built today in new buildings is going to last decades or maybe 50 years. So every day that goes by, even though we may not be 100% renewables, that infrastructures in homes and commercial buildings is going to be there for decades. So there is a cost to waiting. So I just think we need to be mindful of that. I would also remind the council, I think it's 2025 when our Intermountain Power contract expires, which is the lion's share of our carbon-based fuel comes from Intermountain Power. So we'll be moving dramatically to a very clean energy portfolio. So this is the time to be building communities, homes, commercial that supports that clean power supply. To make Steve feel a little better, we have gone through a very extensive examination of capacity and at the power plant because of electrification of electric vehicles. So I'm confident, and we certainly can ask utility to respond to their ability to meet demand. But I tell you that I don't see that as being a concern. We have become very energy efficient. So I feel once again, reliability of the power supply is in good hands, and we just did an IRP update. I would point out in the staff report there is a schedule of cost to operate homes versus dual. What do they say? For dual supplied homes versus electric, and there is a meaningful cost savings as well. And I would advocate for the inclusion of ADUs. I mean, one of our goals of putting ADUs was to increase the affordable housing stock. And if it's going to save, thousands of dollars in terms of construction, I mean, that's going to show up in terms of affordability. So I think there's, I guess I'd kind of follow Mr. Madison's lead in the sense that I think this is really important. I'd want it to be more comprehensive, but I think we have rushed it a little bit. And I think we felt that way at MSC. We did want to be responsive to the staff's sense of urgency. And I do think we need to have a sense of urgency, but I do feel like it could benefit for a second review, and would be happy to take it up at MSC. Because we didn't make a recommendation because it was still being formulated. And I think if it had been more formulated, we probably would have had a lot of those comments today at MSC rather than kind of this discussion. So want to get it done, but I do think there's something to be said about taking it through one more cycle.
Thank you. Mr. Masuda?
Thank you, Mayor, and I appreciate what everyone said. I did get some emails on this subject, and I had the opportunity to talk to our city manager, and I'm satisfied with this first step and to get going. So I just wanted to let you know that, and the council know that I support the recommendation by the staff. Thank you.
Mr. Kennedy?
Mayor, thank you very much. Followed your process that you outlined. I'd like to move staff's recommendation. I think there's enough support tonight to do this in a manner that satisfies all of the concerns, including Councilmember Madison's legitimate concerns related to the issues that he brought to our attention. The middle ground approach that you articulated seemingly would be one that would get all of us on the same page, move this forward, have an opportunity to go back to MSC, provide some input from EAC, and have our professionals at Water and Power weigh in as well. I don't see a reason why we need to emphatically hold up right now. The only concern I have as it relates to comments that my colleagues have made was this mom and pop type of operations that I found out through the stakeholder process came up as what we all believe, I hope, is a legitimate concern, and that is the recommendation at one point was 3, it's now 4. I think that has been satisfied according to what the mayor had shared with us earlier and what the report shared. So I'd like to move staff's recommendation. If there's some minor modifications that get us forward tonight, let's do that, and then come back and have revisit to this process. It didn't seem like there was emphatic support for my recommendation to make this ordinance consistent or parallel with the state, the county, and the city of Los Angeles related to January 2023. And staff gave its assessment as it relates to the lack of 6 months of capturing data or moving our community forward. So I'm not going to let that stop the progress. If that is the case, I would simply say that I'm in support of the July timeframe.
Thank you, Mr.
Hopefully
Kennedy.
I can garner a second. Thank you, Mayor.
Mayor, I'm prepared to second, but I'd like to, if John's willing to formalize a 1 year, we have MSC come back. I'd also ask at that 1 year that we commit to looking at kind of phase 2, which would be the ADUs and the single family residence.
Well, but I think the request of Mr. Madison is that, we have more information. I do think the capture period is important. And I do think that Pasadena should be leading the way on this issue. And certainly, if we can have all of the questions answered by July 1st, we should implement. But that's going to mean that we have a little give and take here. And I would say let's move forward for the July 1st. Begin to let people know who are constructing that we're serious about it and we're headed towards that goal. I think that's important as well. And that capture period, even if it's an additional 6 months, is very important given what we've seen in terms of development. But at the same time, I think we can begin the work, not wait a year to get the answer to some of these questions. I suspect a lot of, for example, the work that has already been done as it relates to questions involving the utility merely need to be reduced to writing, and I'm seeing staff acknowledge that. And so I think we can probably get that done within the next month or so, according to staff and the city manager. And so, look, if there's information that comes back to us after going to reducing all of the staff's work to writing, going to EAC and MSC, yeah, we don't need to adopt the ordinance. We can adjust the ordinance, make an urgency ordinance if we like. Sorry. Bad joke. But we can certainly adjust as we go, and make sure that all of the issues that have been raised are answered, because they're all critical, and people in the community deserve to have that information. So I'm prepared to support the staff recommendation. And
Can I ask, I'm fine with that. I would ask that John consider and the council consider. We talked about phasing, and I think it's important that we set a timeline for that phasing. So I do think we should add that a year from the adoption of the ordinance, that not more than a year, we would add the ADUs and the single family residence. I think I agree with Steve, we should be consistent.
Yeah.
I did want one clarification on timing, Ron. if it's July 1st, what does that mean in terms of if I'm submitting for plans for a permit or where, I don't want to goof up people who are, have built blueprints and have plans that are underway. So where do people, under what circumstances do people have to comply with the electrification ordinance?
With the effective date of the ordinance on July 1st, if they
Yep.
submit a building permit application July 1st or thereafter, they would have to comply with the ordinance.
Okay, so people who are underway or kind of have already submitted for initial plan review or anything like that, they don't have to redo plans. Is that
That's
accurate?
correct. They would be vested.
Okay, so I would like to, if John is willing, add the 1-year phasing to add the ADUs in single family homes.
For consideration by the council, absolutely.
For consideration. We're not making the determination, but we would come back within a year to consider that matter and have the give the opportunity to the public, to weigh in and have the data needed for the council to make that determination within a year. Okay, is that correct?
That's fine.
Okay. Ms. Rivas and followed by Mr. Madison.
Thank you, Mayor. And I guess just to make sure I'm following, so the recommendation that it sounds like Councilmember Kennedy, Councilmember Wilson, and yourself are recommending is to move forward with the staff recommendation, which is to have the city attorney come back in 60 days. But in that period of time, kind of look into the things that Councilmember Madison raised. Am I essentially getting that right?
That's correct, and we would have the opportunity to go to EA with the understanding that if information surfaces or there's more time needed to get the information that we need, then we would adjust accordingly. But I think I do think it's important for people in the community to understand that we're serious about it. We're going to do all that we can, to ensure that we have the information before implementation or even adoption of the ordinance and adjust if needed.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Madison.
So Mayor, my question is just the report talks about the savings on construction, but if this data does exist, it's just not written down. Can staff tell us then what the impact on a family of 4 will be in terms of their monthly utility bill from this initiative, if they're in a unit that falls within the scope?
And Councilmember Madison, thank you for the question. That's part of our data coming back to council. We could quantify that both with construction and operations.
So we're going to impose this tonight, but we don't know what the impact will be on families or residents in terms of the price impact.
We wouldn't be imposing. We're simply giving direction to come back with an ordinance in the interim. We would, yeah, this is just direction to begin the crafting of an ordinance, come back with it. If adjustments need to be made within the time between today and the time that this ordinance comes back, we will certainly do that. But in the meantime, staff will reduce all of its work to writing on the utility side as well as cost side.
And then I wonder if the maker would and the seconder would consider agreeing to send it in that same time period to the EAC to see if they have any comment.
Yes, I think that's in the intent of the motion, Mr. Kennedy. Is that correct?
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, good middle ground and good information for all of us to pursue. Roll call.
Councilmember Hampton is absent. Councilmember Kennedy?
Yes.
Councilmember Madison?
Yes.
Councilmember Masuda?
Yes.
Councilmember Rivas?
Yes.
Councilmember Williams?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wilson?
Yes.
Mayor Gordo?
Yes.
The motion
Yes.
passes without opposition.
Thank you. That moves us on to the next item on our agenda, and that's public hearings.
Mayor and council, before we move on to the public hearing, I just want to note there was a technical error in the submission of some speaker cards, and the following individuals will get an opportunity to speak on public comment, not on the agenda because of the technical error. Nicole King, Alan Shea, Oldham Denham, Jane Ward, Kat Ross, and Michael Williams. Those comment cards will be called at the end of the meeting after all the business has been completed.
Will we be on the 20 minutes?
Yes, we were beyond the
Okay.
20 minutes. We were just heading into the 20-minute timeframe, so they would have carried over anyway.
Thank you.
So this is the time and place for the public hearing on the submittal of the Public Housing Agency Annual Plan 2022 to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. On March 17, 2022, the public hearing notice was published in the Pasadena Press and the Pasadena Journal. The city clerk's office received one letter advocating for the city to create a balance between open space and affordable housing. That letter was posted online, distributed to the city council as part of the record for this public hearing.
Are there any public comment cards? This is a fairly routine matter.
We have two cards submitted for this item.
What's the will of the council? Should we go to public comment and then see where we find ourselves? Public comment?
All right, we will call Aaron Markowitz, followed by Allison Henry. Oh, Aaron has dropped off, so we'll move on to Allison Henry.
Ms. Henry, welcome.
Thank you, council, and good evening. Just wanted to make these comments during the public hearing. Thank you, staff, for the reports. These comments are just in response to the staff report, as well as issues that I've experienced or my neighbors have experienced recently. Last week, Mr. Huang and Councilmember Candy were gracious enough to meet with some tenants from District 3 experiencing some different issues in housing, from illegal evictions to harassment. And I just wanted to lift up in my comments that while the staff report from the housing department has a lot of information, I don't think many of us in the city realize how much community services assists tenants. Community services has been assisting tenants experiencing issues around fair housing, such as discrimination, habitability issues, and harassment. And in trying to reach fair housing goals, I would ask the fuller picture of the city's housing landscape be arrived at by working with community services to gather information. I submitted to the city clerk, Mr. Jomsky, a list of these questions. And this is to community services. I would like them to share with us the number of Pasadena tenants that have been assisted by community services for unlawful detainers. I would like to know the number of Pasadena tenants community services has assisted with unlawful rent increases. I would like to know the number of Pasadena tenants community services has assisted with restraining orders against landlords. I would like to know the number of Pasadena tenants community services has assisted with habitability issues and code violations. In working with some, do I just have 90 seconds for this public hearing? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
All right, well,
Go ahead and wrap up your comments, Ms. Henry. Go ahead.
thank you. So just some understanding that there's a unfortunate time limit here. My request of the council widely, we don't have the residential inspections happening like they should. We have a lot of habitability issues, particularly for Section 8 tenants. We have things that need repairs in properties in dilapidation. We need to close that renovation loophole because there does seem to be a correlation of tenants struggling with habitability issues then to get that, which is not right now an illegal just cause eviction because of the city's moratorium. In talking with community services, we have a lot of bad actors that are repeat bad actors. I would like to see penalties for these bad actors. We do need some sort of rental registry or something to keep track. I think in speaking with community services, y'all would be really surprised at how many tenants they have worked with. And we do know that we need rent stabilization Pasadena specific. These are requests in writing.
Allison,
so,
if you can just wrap up your comments and if you will send the questions that you have to us.
I just got it at
26th. So
Got
we will distribute that around to the
I'll just,
city
And
council.
we'll get
Great,
answers
and
to.
thank you, Mayor. And I'll just wrap up by saying that the picture that we're getting from housing, thank you very much to staff for that work, but it's a partial picture of what tenants are experiencing.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
Thank you. So we'll get answers to those questions. I would say that it's my understanding, and Mr. Wong can correct me if I'm wrong, but as it relates to Section 8, we do conduct annual inspections and have not ceased that practice.
That is correct.
So there are annual inspections. Okay. Mr. Madison, did you have your hand up?
Maybe not.
No. Okay, I think that's from the previous item. Okay, is there a motion
To close the public hearing?
to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Moved. Is there a second? Closing the public hearing? Seconded by Ms. Rivas. And on the merits, oh, I'm sorry, roll call to close the public hearing. Thank
To
you.
close the public hearing, Councilmember Hampton is absent. Councilmember Kennedy,
Yes.
Councilmember Madison. Might have might have not here. All right. Councilmember Masuda,
Yes.
Councilmember Rivas,
Yes.
Councilmember Williams,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wilson,
Yes.
Mayor Gordo.
Yes, on the merits, is there a motion to submit?
Public hearing is closed.
Vice Mayor Wilson, did you have a motion on the merits?
I'm happy to move the item.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Roll call.
To approve the staff recommendation, Councilmember Hampton is absent. Councilmember Kennedy,
Yes.
Councilmember Madison,
Yes.
Councilmember Masuda,
Yes.
Councilmember Rivas,
Yes.
Councilmember Williams,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wilson,
Yes.
Mayor Gordo.
Yes.
Motion is approved without opposition.
Mr. Madison, can we ask you to put your virtual hand down? It's causing confusion. Unless you have a comment. Well, thank you. Okay.
Silent protest there, Mayor. Sorry.
So noted. Next item is item 11. And
And as the staff comes in, the city clerk's office received correspondence on item 11. A previous correspondence received in January of this year, 5 letters advocating to name the new park the Edward Van Halen Park, 1 letter providing biographical information on the band Van Halen. The current correspondence, we received 10 letters advocating for the city council to name the new park the Edward Van Halen Park. We received 15 letters advocating for the city council to name the new park the Playhouse Village Park, and 1 letter advocating for the city council to name the park after Octavia Butler and the stage after Eddie Van Halen. Those comments, those letters were posted online, distributed to the council, and as part of the record for this item.
thank you. And of course, we all have in mind the school district's recent action naming Washington Middle School the Octavia Butler, after Octavia Butler, I should say. And certainly that's an action that we all support. With that, how many comments are there?
7.
Why don't we do a brief presentation and then we'll go to the comments.
So we will keep it brief. Good evening, Mayor, City Council. Yes. Tony Olmos, your Public Works Director, and I'll just provide a quick introduction and then I'll turn over to our staff for a very brief presentation.
Wait till it comes up. There it is.
Oh.
They can't see it until we see it.
So just for a little bit of background before I turn over to Hayden. As you may know, the construction of the new park on Union Street have been in the planning phase for well over a decade. The project finally came to fruition within the last few years and started construction in August of last year. The project is expected to complete in June of this year. So during the design phase of the project, staff received requests to name the park. In response, staff conducted community outreach for the city's park naming policy to name the park. No, not yet. No, I'll turn it over real briefly, real
Okay.
briefly. So the item before you is to consider the input from the community and listen to the presentation from our staff, which I'll turn over to Hayden. Hayden Melbourne, he's our principal civil engineer and project manager for this project. He'll walk you through the process that we followed, the survey results, and the Rec and Park Commission recommendation on the next steps. So Hayden.
Right. Good evening, Council, Honorable Mayor. Thank you for having me this evening. Hayden Melbourne, Principal Engineer for the record. We're here tonight regarding the naming of the new park located at 701 East Union Street. On the screen, you can see an overview of the conceptual park rendering. The park is approximately 1 acre, including the parking lot, about 2/3 dedicated to the green space for the park use. 48 parking spaces take up about 1/3 of an acre. There is a 2-stall gender-neutral restroom on site with a storage inside the building. There's also the trellis shade structure that's acts as a stage and a performance area for the park as well. There's a children's play area with shade structures and rubberized play surface, and a water feature located off the El Molino Plaza. And there's also a separated off-leash dog park for small and large dogs at the northwest corner. City staff on July 26th opened up an online poll asking for input from the local community regarding the name of possible names for the park. We sent out, per the naming policy, 485 mailers to local property owners within a 1,000-foot radius. And we also notified them of a second survey that would come out in the coming weeks based on the names that were received. We also posted physical signage at the park itself along the construction sign at both corners of El Molino and Oak Knoll. And we also sent out notifications via the city's social media platforms. On August 20th, we started another survey. We received from the survey, on August 20th, we received 725 submissions, including 45 unique names. We had vetted these different names based on the criteria of the naming policy. And then based on those, we posted 25 of the names that made the finalist list on September 13th. We closed that survey on September 24th, and we limited the responses to the survey to 1 per IP address, so there was no ballot stuffing on this. So we received 4,290 responses from unique IP addresses for this. The top 3 recipients names that we had were Octavia Butler Park, Eddie Van Halen Park, and Playhouse Village Park, and various variations of each one of those names. As per the naming policy, on December 7th, 2021, we went to the Rec and Parks Commission to give them the information that we received from the online polls. It was the Rec and Parks Commission recommendation that the new park be named after Octavia Butler with a trellis shade structure named after Eddie Van Halen. After we went to that commission meeting, we then received contact with the Eddie Van Halen family, and they preferred that the name be trellis shade structure be named after the Van Halen band itself. So on February 8th, 2022, we went back to Rec and Parks Commission, and they revised their recommendation for the stage name to just Van Halen Stage. And as you mentioned, Mayor, in the month of February, I believe it was, PUSD did vote to name the school at Washington Middle School after Octavia Butler. So we are here tonight for City Council to discuss the merits of each of the names that are recommended. And upon your decision tonight, we'll take appropriate actions for naming of the park and this park signage. Thank you.
Thank you. Public comment? Oh, Ms. Williams has a question. I'm sorry, Ms. Williams.
So just kind of a couple of questions. It was mentioned that there was a request to name the park. Who submitted the request to have the park named?
There was no formal request sent to name the park. Back in late 2020, we, with the various stakeholders that we worked with, including Playhouse Village Association, there was definitely an interest about what the park would be named. So based on that, then we proceeded to research the naming policy and go forward.
Okay, good. The naming policy is a little bit unclear when it applies and when it doesn't. So just some clarification on that later would be great, because it says that when there is a request to name a park, so it seems like someone would have to initiate that request. So just wondering how we initiated this process and some clarification going forward. And by the way, I like the rose lapels
Oh, thank you very
with
much.
the Public Works Department. Very classy. So that was my only question. Thanks.
Mr. Kennedy?
Mayor, this is my district, and I have some views that I'd like to share, but I think it'd be premature for me to really share them until I heard, or the council has heard from the speakers that put in cards tonight. So if I may, Mayor, I'd like to speak
Okay,
after.
fair enough. Thank you.
Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. I think that's a good approach. I would like to highlight that the matter went to Rec and Parks prior to the school district, prior to the school district making its recommendation. And so we should consider that, or not making it its recommendation, but taking action to name the middle school after Octavia. Okay, with that, public comment?
Thank you, Mayor. We'll call Sean Patterson, followed by Rhonda Schmalfeld, followed by John William McMahon. Sean?
Sean?
Hi, can
Hi,
you
go
guys
ahead.
see me or hear me?
We can hear you. Go ahead. 1 minute, 30 seconds.
Thank you for all for having me. I'm a 32-year resident of Los Angeles and a longtime friend and visitor of Pasadena. I am an Academy Award, Grammy, and Emmy-nominated composer and songwriter and guitarist. I am a huge advocate for turning the park and dedicating it to the Van Halen family. I probably don't need to tell any of you, but if in case you don't know, Edward Van Halen personally has revolutionized the guitar and amplifier industry, hundreds of millions of dollars. I think applying the name to this park is not only great for just to honor him, but let's be frank, for tourism. At some point, even if kids today may not know who Edward Van Halen is, he is arguably, not arguably, I looked it up, he is by far the most famous musician in the history of Pasadena. Migrated from Holland. I mean, it's a remarkable story, an American story, and I think his family deserves that honor.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson. Next speaker.
Rhonda Schmalfeld, followed by John William McMahon, followed by Julie Kimura. Rhonda?
Hi, good evening. Hello?
Hi, go ahead.
This is Rhonda Schmalfeld. I'm from the Pasadena for Van Halen, and I'm reaching out to you tonight to speak and encourage you to reject the recommendation of the Recreation and Parks Commission and instead vote in favor of naming our city's newest park after Edward Van Halen. Eddie Van Halen Park received 84% of the vote in the city survey, and yet Recreation and Parks Commission recommendation was for Octavia Butler Park, which received 13% of the vote. Can you imagine what would happen if you, as a candidate for public office, received 84% of votes in an election and then were not sworn into office? I'm sure you'd be outraged, and that's how many people in our great city feel. How can we have faith in our leaders when such decisions are made? Naming this park for Eddie Van Halen, a man whose life exemplifies the American dream, a man who reflects our city's core values, and a man who is a rock and roll legend, is the fair and right thing to do. As you know, cities around the world have established a proud tradition of naming public spaces after famous musicians. And tonight I'm asking you to add Pasadena to the list of cities who have created amazing spaces that show their great pride for superstars who have impacted the world of music. Our organization, Pasadena for Van Halen, is committed to working with the city and will happily donate all of our available funds to the Eddie Van Halen Park and Van
Thank
Halen
you, Ms.
Stage.
Schmalfeld. Your time
Tonight,
is,
I urge you, on behalf of Van Halen
your
fans
time is
everywhere,
expired.
to name this park after the man who received the most votes and is certainly the most deserving.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. John William McMahon? No. Julie Kimura, followed by Brian Wallace, followed by Phil Hockey. Star 6, Julie? Ms. Kimura? There you go. Are you there? Ms. Kimura? I don't know what the problem is, but we'll put you back into the regular meeting. We'll bring you back. Go to Brian Wallace, followed by Phil Hockey. Mr. Wallace, go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor and council members and staff. Tonight's very exciting for us here in Playhouse Village. This is one of the last steps in the effort to create this park that dates back decades. The park under construction in Playhouse Village is a result of many people working in some ways for many, many years, not the least of which are our very dedicated staff who chose excellent consultants and formed a really powerful stakeholder group that partnered with Playhouse Village and the city to create the park that we now are looking forward to seeing in a couple of months. We, of course, here to urge you to support the name Playhouse Village Park. And it's important to understand why, but there's a few reasons. Playhouse Village is where this park is located. This is where our multifamily growth is occurring. This is a neighborhood. This is what people need in a neighborhood. Playhouse Village development activity is what generated the funds to make the park a reality. Playhouse Village will help clean and maintain the park alongside the city. Playhouse Village will also help activate and program the park, also in partnership with the city. But in addition to the residents, it's our businesses, our cultural partners, our office workers, our students, and thousands of others in Playhouse Village who will be here every day to enjoy this new neighborhood park. So the important result of the park naming process is that this is an opportunity to recognize the investment that our stakeholders have made, the excitement they feel, and the commitment they're making to the park's success.
Thank you, Mr. Wallace. Your time has expired.
Thank you.
Thank you. You want to try Julie Kimura one more time, then Phil Hockey? Star 6 to unmute, Julie. Are you there? We seem to be having some problems with your phone, so I'm not sure. We'll try and connect with you in a second.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, now we can. Great. 1 minute, 30
Okay,
seconds.
so
Please
sorry
go
about
ahead.
Okay, as you know, the Parks and Recreation Committee voted to name the new park after Octavia Butler, despite Eddie Van Halen winning the public vote by a huge margin. And I don't even understand why they held a vote if they weren't going to honor the results. It was very inappropriate, and I'd like for you to step in and correct this wrong by naming the park after Van Halen. I do recognize that the band's genre isn't for everyone, but that can be said about any of the prominent people the city is considering to honor. There is no denying that Van Halen is among the upper echelon of their class and will always have a profound influence in the music world. None of Pasadena's exemplary residents are at an equal level of accomplishments in their respective field. There are many people who hail from Pasadena, and the city's efforts to show its love should be shared. As you pointed out, Octavia Butler is going to have a middle school named after her, and having 2 major sites named after one person just doesn't seem right when we don't have enough sites to go around. So, thank you for considering the name of the new park to be Van Halen, who was the winner of the vote that the Parks and Recreation Commission tossed aside, and the only candidate who holds such an immense amount of esteem. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll call Phil Hockey, followed by Marjorie Limbeck, followed by Allison Henry.
My name is Phil Hockey. I was city manager of Pasadena during the 1990s when the Playhouse District was created. I now serve as a special advisor to the Playhouse Village Association as well as president of the newly created Playhouse Village Foundation. I also live downtown near the park. Over the past 30 years, the Playhouse District has been fulfilling its potential to become a vibrant residential and economic center of Pasadena. To better emphasize this emerging urban village that is a wonderful mix of residential, business, entertainment, and dining, the Playhouse District changed its name to become Playhouse Village. There are plans underway to enhance the beauty and pedestrian experience of Playhouse Village. This park is important to emphasize the identity of Playhouse Village, and the park will be a centerpiece for community activity and celebrations. I urge you to support this downtown urban village by giving the park the name of Playhouse Village Park.
Thank you, Mr. Hockey. Next speaker would be Marjorie Lindbeck, followed by Allison Henry. Marjorie?
Here I am. Can you hear
Hi.
me?
We can. 1 minute, 30 seconds. Go ahead.
Great, thank you. I'm Margie Lindbeck. I am a resident and property owner in Pasadena. I know you've got a lot of letters from us and from my neighbors, and I am appearing tonight before you to urge the advocation of Playhouse Village Park as the name for this new park for several reasons. Number one, it honors a decades-long advocation for a park from the residents and businesses in the Central District. The park's been funded largely through fees that we've all paid into. The park, like most city parks, I believe should be named for the area that it is. And we take our name from the iconic Playhouse, Pasadena Playhouse. We voted as neighbors and businesses in the district to continue our property-based improvement district with increased funding, particularly to help fund activation and maintenance of this new park. I will also just mention that I sat through all the redistricting task force meetings over the past year, and the members spoke frequently about the need for the downtown residents to kind of get organized and create their own community. And the city of Pasadena is over 225 years old, and the neighborhoods are well established. We're not even maybe 20 years old. When I moved here in 2007, it was pretty new to have a downtown development. This is going to be our little park in our small urban village, and we really would love to have it be the Playhouse Village Park.
Thank you, Ms. Lindbeck. Your time has expired. Allison Henry is the next in queue. Do we have her? Hi, Allison.
Hi, good evening. Thank you. And just very quickly, my comments, council, we are great. We're blessed to have so many smart people in our city. I would just lift up that Octavia Butler won a McCarthy Fellowship Award for her writing. One of the few African-American science fiction writers of her time. She allowed many of us to envision the world differently. And Miss Butler did not get around by car, but she got around by bus and on foot. And I would say that the area of the Playhouse District was definitely a big part of where she hung out and spent time and observed life to give us the great works of literature as gifts. And I would just put in a vote for being mindful of keeping the name of the park in her name. But I also saw that there's a proposal for the stage being named after Mr. Van Halen, which would be pretty sweet, to quote some 80s jargon. But Octavia Butler made wonderful contributions to our city and literature, and I hope we're mindful of that when naming this park. Thank you.
Thank you. That completes public comment on this item.
Thank you. Before I turn to members of the council, let me turn to the city manager.
I just a couple of matters of clarification and to answer Councilwoman Williams' question as well. We were actually caucusing because, of course, when this started, we weren't here. But our best recollection is that among the first, if not the first request to look at naming this park came from Playhouse Village Board, which would make sense because they have been proponents of the park for decades now. The second is in looking at the policy, which is part of your package tonight, it's not intended to be a vote. It's not intended, the whole process is to reach out and get ideas that then can be vetted through Park and Rec Commission, and then finally, the ultimate decision, as it should be, rests with this council, based on the information that you have about what else is happening in the city, what else is named after people that have been brought forward, or names that have been brought forward as suggestions, and thinking the long-term use of any of the park and recreation facilities that this policy covers. So I just wanted to clarify, you have full discretion as to what you think would be best, and nowhere in the policy does it talk about it being a vote. We gave you the numbers of what we heard, but that is not intended to dictate the answer that you decide. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson, followed by Mr. Kennedy.
I believe, Mayor, that I was in the queue prior.
Yeah, I'm not sure because one of you is.
No, John should go
Okay.
first, and I'll go second. It's
Mr.
fine.
Kennedy, you should know that there are two different screens. I'm looking at one for people who are here and one who are participating virtually, and it's difficult to tell what order you came in. Go ahead, Mr. Kennedy.
Sorry about that, Mayor. First of all, I'd like to thank Playhouse Village organization, its members, all who participated. I'd like to thank the 4,000 or so respondents to questionnaires, or those who would let us know what their views are about the park. I'd like to thank previous staff, current staff, and former colleagues and current colleagues for really bringing this park to fruition. And I want the community to know that I hear you as the city council member for District 3, where this park is located, and Vice Mayor Wilson and myself, along with others, including other colleagues, have focused our attention in getting this done, as opposed to continual iterations of conversation. And so I applaud all of my colleagues, the community, and those, whether they live in Pasadena or not, for their participation, including relative Octavia Butler and also Eddie Van Halen. And just a small comment about this young man from Europe. He made a particular point, say how welcoming the African American community was in his life, and the role the African American community played in his development as an extraordinary guitarist. So I want to have that as a part of the record because it was important to Eddie. I believe that the Pasadena Unified School District has taken an extraordinary step forward in naming not a park, but really a whole school after the extraordinary intellect Octavia Butler. And all of you know that her papers, her work, are housed at the world-renowned Huntington Library, just adjacent to the city of Pasadena. And I think it's extraordinary that her works are there for researchers to review. But back to the point of recognizing the importance of this extraordinary intellect that was a part of our wonderful fabric of life in Pasadena. I think the PUSD has done us all a great service in doing that. And so, in part, it takes the pressure, if you will, if there is any pressure, away from the great need to name a quote-unquote park after Octavia Butler. Additionally, the vote related to naming the park Eddie Van Halen Park, I can see why there's a need to name something after this extraordinary human being. Extraordinary on multiple levels. I could see us naming the stage, as the family has suggested, after Eddie Van Halen. But in terms of a situs, a location where all of the community would know where to go, and those who would visit the Playhouse District, it seems to me that the gravitation towards naming the park the Playhouse Village Park is most appropriate. And that is not to suggest that in any way it would diminish from the desires of the community related to Octavia Butler, who, by the way, admittedly in the report did not receive the majority of votes. But I'm also impressed by the Van Halen family that came back to staff to say that how they would like the name to be used related to the stage, which is the Van Halen stage, which I think is inappropriate. So I'm hoping tonight, I'm not sure, but I'm hoping tonight that my colleagues and the mayor will see that we've already, as a community, recognized the important significance of an ongoing significance of Octavia Butler by naming Washington Middle School after this extraordinary intellect, leader, poet, author, etc. And that we can accommodate with the Van Halen family the stage, but name the park the Playhouse Village Park. That will be my motion tonight. I will ask my colleague, any colleague who believes that we're moving in the right direction in that regard, to hopefully find a second for that motion and hopefully ultimately receive the unanimous support of this city council. Thank you, Mayor, for the opportunity to share.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Vice Mayor Wilson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Before I speak on the matter, I want to get a conflict clearance from the city attorney. I have to confess, I've been a lifelong Van Halen fan. But we'll still speak on the matter. As some may recall, with Councilmember Kennedy's support, my office organized a working group to try to free up the idea of where we were going to put a park in the Playhouse District area. When it was called the Playhouse District at that time, not the village. There was a concentration of residents and businesses who felt there was a need for open space. And as was alluded to and mentioned in the public speakers, those dollars came from the local residents who paid impact fees, and we had no park. And we were at a standstill, and that working group met for over a year, and with involvement from the Playhouse bid, neighbors, property owners, and ultimately ended up coming up with this compromise where the park has now been built. And it was with great excitement that Banner Bank building was added to that location. And without that working group that represented that neighborhood in that village, there would be no park. And I think, as John mentioned, it's important to recognize who the park was built for and who were kind of at the front line of making this happen. And a lot of compromises were made, as you remember, like no one was going to have parking, and so I won't re-prosecute that history. But the park is now underway, and I do think it's appropriate to recognize that area of town, and I do think it's taken on a very important identity. So I do support and second Councilmember Kennedy's motion to name it Playhouse Village Park, and I think it's certainly appropriate to recognize, my idol, Eddie Van Halen, and the band by naming the stage or the band shell after Mr. Van Halen's band that I was listening today on my playlist. So, John, I'm happy to second your motion.
Thank you. I too agree. I think the key word in your comments, Vice Mayor Wilson, and I see them also in Mr. Kennedy's words, is identity. And the Playhouse Village is an area that we're looking to create a sense of place in, a sense of identity, and naming the park the Playhouse Village Park moves us in that direction. I think that's an important point to be made here. I think the school district, absent the school district's action, we might be in a different place, but certainly we all applaud the school district's action. As it relates to the naming of the stage, I had the opportunity to communicate directly with representatives of the Van Halen family when we were we were looking for a way to honor Eddie Van Halen's name and contributions to music at the convention center. And it was clear to me then, as it is now, that their chosen path is to honor the family name, not just Eddie, as great as his contributions for all the reasons that have been stated are. I mean, as a human being, as a resident, as a musician, his contributions to the guitar, all of those things are tremendous. But it's the wish of the family that we honor the Van Halen name and band, and not one member. And so I think we should recognize that. And so I'm prepared to support the recommendation because it moves us closer to creating a sense of, well, there is already a sense of place, but enhancing, I should say, enhancing the sense of place at the Playhouse Village, and helping those who maybe aren't familiar with the Playhouse Village become better acquainted with it, and find a place that they can recreate and enjoy within the Playhouse Village. I still want to say district, but trying to be disciplined about village. So I'm prepared to support for all the reasons the motion. Okay, is there anything further? See none, roll call.
Councilmember Hampton is absent. Councilmember Kennedy.
Yes.
Councilmember Madison.
Yes.
Councilmember Masuda.
Yes.
Councilmember Rivas.
Yes.
Councilmember Williams.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wilson.
Yes.
Mayor Gordo.
Yes.
The motion is approved without opposition.
Thank you. And congratulations to all of you who've worked so hard, not just on the park, but on this issue. Smart Karen and Hayden, Tony, thank you. Okay, that brings us to the next item. This is item 12, and this is an information item. You all, and I'll just present it quickly, and then we can move on to public comment. You'll all recall that after a number of council discussions related to rules and procedures, I appointed an ad hoc committee of the city council and said here at the council meeting that we would do that in order to review the council's process rules and meeting procedures. That ad hoc committee consisted of Mr. Madison and Councilmember Williams, and we have before you today a informational item related to a pilot that we discussed, and this is on a trial basis to bring matters, public comment for matters not on the agenda to the end of the council's agenda. And again, this is a pilot intended to give us more information going forward.
Mayor, you're going in and out.
This is a pilot intended to provide the council and the committee more information going forward as to whether this might be a better approach. Too often we've found ourselves here after a long evening with very important matters, and I've heard from members of the community, I think we all have, that when we take up important matters and late in the evening. It denies people an opportunity to weigh in on those important matters. And when a matter finds itself on the council agenda, typically it's here for the last action. And typically it's here for the final time, and it represents the public's opportunity to weigh in for the final time prior to council action. Now, I distinguish that from public comment for matters not on the agenda. There's an opportunity to weigh in every week, and we'll continue that. People will continue to have the opportunity to weigh in every week, and people will retain the opportunity to call on us individually or write to us. There are multiple ways to communicate with us, and I can assure you that people do. We all see the emails, we all see the letters, and we all receive the phone calls. But it's when we tell the public this is our agenda, these are the matters that are going to be discussed and voted on, and we don't do it in a timely manner. In my view, it could have the impact of suppressing the public's input on matters that we've listed for formal council action, and that seems unfair. And so the committee is suggesting that we try a pilot for a few months. And it may change when we're back in person. If we're back in person, and then I might have a different view. If there are people here waiting to give public comment on matters not on the agenda, then I would say that would militate towards maybe allowing the public before we hear the agenda items and not asking them to stay towards the end. So the suggestion that I am making, given the ad hoc committee's recommendation, is that we try this on a pilot basis for a few months and see where we are, or that we review the process when we're able to come back in person to see if we want to continue the pilot or adjust at that point. It's well within the council's purview to adjust its meeting procedures. So with that, I'm prepared to answer any questions or ask my colleagues, Ms. Williams or Mr. Madison, who made up the ad hoc committee, if they might have any questions or comments.
Mayor,
Ms. Williams, followed by Ms. Madison.
It's a quick sort of question comment, but I know that on the committee, we did review the practices of other cities. So I think it's important, the cities in the county. In terms of benchmarking, so I think it's important to just provide, if we have some of that information here. It was a very interesting survey of the cities around us, and they do it in various ways, but I think there are three or four cities that are comparable to ours that have a similar process. So that was interesting to hear that. I don't know if we could have that information here or provide that information to the council.
Yes. Yeah, and that's been provided. Mr. Madison, including the county, by the way, where public comment for matters not on the agenda is item number 66. The very last item on the last agenda that I reviewed. Mr. Madison?
Yes, Mayor, I think I might just amplify. We definitely did discuss too at the ad hoc committee, the idea that for residents to have to wait till the end of the meeting is not optimal. And, people have, families and children to put to bed and meals to cook and clean up and all the things that families do. But I think the sentiment overall was that that's occurring already because of a persistent group that continues to sort of monopolize the public comment on items not on the agenda, many of whom are not Pasadena residents. Correct me if I'm wrong, Michelle, or whoever is there tonight from city attorney, I apologize, I just can't see that, that we can't sort of single out Pasadena residents, can we, for public comment?
That's correct.
And we can't give them a priority even in terms of being heard?
That's correct.
So, I think as the mayor said, this was a pilot notion that I don't think is optimal, but again, it's almost like the public comment is being hijacked week after week after week on issues that a small segment of the community and beyond, outside the community of Pasadena feel is important, but it wasn't really benefiting those folks that we were thinking about. So it's not an easy question, and I do give great weight to the concerns that many right-thinking people have raised that this is not optimal, and I agree with that. So those are my thoughts, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Why don't we go ahead and turn, Vice Mayor Wilson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I was, as you know, out of town when we had our last regular meeting rather than the joint meeting, and did hear about this proposed change. I'm actually reading about it in Pasadena now, which, who knows, all that great information. I do want to defer to the ad hoc committee on this item. As I mentioned to you personally, that I understand, and as Steve said, there is a small regular group that tends to monopolize that time. And I think we've heard their voices, and I think we've tried to respond as much as we can. But I'm concerned that they're squelching other voices that we do want to hear around new topics that we haven't heard. I am somewhat skeptical that this is going to be the fix, but I think I'm open to trying it. So I like the idea of this as being as a pilot. We do get a lot of great information from the public, and I think trying to figure out how to allow more voices to participate in the process is critical. And I'm not sure this is the solution, but I'm open to trying it. So I think we just need to see how it works. Because I know I personally do find that a lot of great information and perspectives and agenda items get raised from the public, and we do need to do a better job to make sure more voices are heard. So I'm willing to give this a try.
Ms. Rivas, you had your hand up, followed by Mr. Kennedy.
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to all the members of the ad hoc committee for kind of elaborating, providing some explanation for the basis for the trial. I feel like with public comment, there's no optimal way. We're always going to inconvenience someone, unfortunately, just given the length of our meetings. And so I'm always willing to try new things. And it sounds like the Vice Mayor, I'm also a little skeptical, but we'll see. I do share a lot of concerns that members of the public have already raised. But kind of my immediate concern right now, and I think the mayor already addressed this, is that we be sure to revisit this before we go back to in person, because I really am worried about making people wait in person to the very end. If we realize before then, that's not the best way to go. So thank you very much.
Yep, I do think there's a distinction to be drawn when we are 100% back in person, no question. Mr. Kennedy?
I want to support the work of the ad hoc committee, but I was surprised by the announcement at our last meeting. In the 9 years that I've served on the council, we have had a host of individuals who have come to the council to speak on matters not on the agenda. And they've not been very nice. They've not been very kind. They've used colorful language, and they've used what I would call occasionally hate-filled language. But I've always kind of like weighed First Amendment rights, and though all of us, including the mayor, has been unfairly attacked. And some have used very awful language towards us. You know, I remember, I don't even want to say the word, but someone who happens to be African American referring to another African American in these words that the KKK used to use. I mean, just very hurtful. But my feeling is, Mayor and colleagues, is that I don't want to limit opportunity to speak. I want to expand opportunity to speak. And we're only talking about, if I have this correct and the clerk can correct me, 20 minutes out of our lives. And then we move all of what doesn't come within the 20 minutes to the end of the meeting. So yes, Mayor, yes, colleagues, I'm torn. I like the fact that the mayor has said that we would pilot this, which makes me move in a direction, give greater deference to our new mayor. But I want you to know the gravity of my sentiments and concerns, that we not stifle First Amendment rights, that we are empathetic with women and men who happen to have young children and would like to talk to us at the beginning of a meeting as opposed to at the end of the meeting. And as you all recall, this council, that occasionally our meetings have gone past midnight. So we need to be cognizant of that. We need to be empathetic, and we need to be honest. I am a little remiss that any of the ad hoc committee would identify people who do not live in our community for any cause to move in the direction of the pilot. I think that's not in our best interest, given the fact that the city attorney has said that anyone basically is eligible to speak to the council on matters not on the agenda. And residency or the fact that you're a voter in Pasadena has no bearing on your ability to speak. So I think I should stop here out of respect
Thank
for
you.
my colleagues and their time. And want to just thank you for the opportunity to share my views, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Yeah, you know, I think there's always a little bit of reservation on the part of everyone. When we, you know, this is a delicate balance, and that's why it's a pilot. But what weighs heavily on me, as I know it does on others, is when the public doesn't have the opportunity or the opportunity to participate on matters that are listed for formal action, and so often final action, and the public is denied, or their opportunity to participate on those matters is diminished. And you know, if we're going to give priority, I think, you know, in my view, we should err on the side of giving priority to matters that are listed on our council agenda for very often for final action, and see how that works. If it doesn't work, then we can come back to, we'll know at the end of the pilot whether or not it's working. And certainly, I agree, when the public is back in the chambers and we ask them to come here to give public comment, that's a different situation, and we'll have to adjust accordingly at that point in time, is my view. Okay, we have 20 comment cards.
We do.
Okay, let's go ahead.
Before we call anybody, I just will read out the correspondence received. The city clerk's office received 14 letters expressing concerns with the staff recommendation and the recommendation and advocating for the city council to continue to allow public comment on matters not on the agenda at the beginning of council meetings. Those letters were distributed at the council, posted online, are part of the record for this item. The first speaker is Sonia Burnt, followed by Kat Ross, followed by Raul Ibanez, followed by Unali Jost.
Sonia, 1 minute, 30 seconds. Go ahead.
Good evening. A very critical piece missing from the biased agenda report authored by the mayor and council members Williams and Madison is any indication that this select committee did a thorough analysis of the pros and cons of the two options. To the three select council members that decided to impose this onerous new rule, when you made your decision, did you determine that ending the agenda 20 minutes earlier was more important than the interests of our seniors, parents of small children, and others who are unable to wait 4 to 6 hours to the end of the meeting? Did you determine that moving the 20-minute comment period to the end is necessary, quote, to ensure the timely consideration of agendized items, unquote? If so, did you consider the cost of this onerous new rule to community members who are unable to wait 4 to 6 hours to make their comments? To the other 5 members of the council, please publicly oppose this newest arbitrary and unfair attempt to silence community members. Tell the public that you have weighed the interests of community members to speak for 20 minutes at the beginning of the meeting against the probability that community voices will be silenced, and that you believe 20 minutes at the beginning of the meeting strikes the right balance. I've listened to the council's discussion. It's infuriating and it's insulting. We're talking about 20 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Kat Ross, followed by Raul Ibanez, followed by Una Lee Yost. Ms. Ross?
Hi.
1 minute, 30 seconds. Go ahead.
Sure, yeah. I looked up all of the cities that are a similar size to Pasadena today. And of the 25 cities that are most similar in size to Pasadena in California, 20 have public comment at the beginning of their agenda. In fact, only 5 don't. I'll read them to you. Elk Grove, Garden Grove, Hayward, Salinas, Palmdale, Sunnyvale, Pomona, Escondido, Torrance, Fullerton, Orange, Roseville, Visalia, Concord, Thousand Oaks, Simi Valley, Victorville, Fairfield, Carlsbad, Marietta. You can actually keep going. And the cities that didn't actually had really interesting policies. Like, for instance, Oceanside posts that they'll take public comment at 6 o'clock so that the public knows that later into the meeting when they'll be expected. So it's not just like randomly at 9 p.m. or randomly at 7 p.m. There's an obvious time for the public. So we're looking at many, many cities that do the right thing. And it looks just like maybe there's like Glendale and Corona and a few others that are much further away that don't. And I'm saddened to hear that Pasadena is considering putting themselves in that camp, the camp of the very few that are distancing their ears from public opinion.
Thank you, Ms. Ross. Your time has expired. Raul Ibanez, followed by Una Lee Yost, followed by Ellen Finkelpearl.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. 1 minute, 30 seconds. Go ahead.
Okay, good evening. My name is Raul Ibanez. I'm a District 5 resident, and I'm here to ask that our public comments on matters not on the agenda be kept at the beginning of the meeting. Because with all due respect, we see what the council is doing. First, our public comments are shortened from 3 minutes to 90 seconds. Then a plethora of special meetings that revoke that ability take place. And now public comments are being moved to the end of meetings. And for what? Because Victor believes agendized public comments should be prioritized, which implies that non-agendized items are subordinate. Well, I just want to remind Victor that just because we aren't on here cussing out the council every other meeting like other folks, doesn't mean that we're not watching and that we're not expecting the same accountability that is being clearly and consistently demanded. And may I also remind the mayor that it is your job to make yourself available to us, all of us, and not just at your leisure nor at the time you feel is more convenient for the council. So please keep the original format of public comments at the beginning of the meetings, because frankly, it's embarrassing that we even have to talk about this. This is not the leader our community voted you to be, Victor, and you need to start listening to us, or we will elect someone who will. I render my time.
Thank you. Una Lee Yost, followed by Ellen Finkelpearl, followed by Denise Robb.
Dear council members, I'm Una Lee Yost, PhD parent and public education advocate. I'm deeply disappointed to learn that instead of reserving the first 20 minutes of every council meeting for public comment on any issue members of the community wish to address, Mayor Gordo and a committee have decided to move this free public comment to the end of the meeting. For the past year, I've been impressed by the varied voices during the free public comment period, highlighting urgent issues of community concern like racial justice and housing justice gaps in our city. By moving this free public comment to the end of the meeting, it gives the unfortunate perception that some members of our city council are tired of hearing these voices. One argument asserted for such change is that non-Pasadena residents have dominated the public comment on items not on the agenda, impeding the council's ability to hear Pasadena residents and do the important work of the council. However, I and many other Pasadenans beg to differ. Aside from the fact that the Brown Act requires every agenda for regular meetings to provide an opportunity for members of the public, regardless of residency, to directly address the council on any item of interest to the public, many of those offering public comment in the past year have been connected with groups such as Showing Up for Racial Justice, Altadena Pasadena, My Tribe Rise, Black Lives Matter Los Angeles, Black Lives Matter Pasadena, and Make Housing and Communities Happen. All of these groups serve and include among its leaders and members Pasadenans. In addition, those that speak on behalf of those groups during public comment periods, regardless of whether they are Pasadena residents or not, and many are voicing the concerns of many Pasadenans. For
Ms.
example,
Jost, your time has expired.
Mennonite Church, our pastor, Reverend Bert Newton, is a leader of Make Housing Community Happen who has coordinated many members.
We'll call
various
Ellen
Pasadena-
Finkelpearl, followed by Denise Robb, followed by Ryan Bell.
Hi, I'm Ellen Finkelpearl, Pasadena resident. When I moved to Pasadena, I was really thrilled to see that city council meetings actually began with the council listening to the community about matters important to them. And that's really important symbolically, that the meetings begin with you listening to the community. It was a remarkable example of direct representative democracy. So it's disturbing that some of the members have decided that this distinctive feature of our city government to move to the end of the meeting, thus discouraging all but the most persistent or those without children, jobs, or other obligations from speaking out. The rationale given in the staff report is that the council needs to devote its time to matters that are on the agenda and therefore most important to address. But this is to assume that the mayor and the council are the ones who know what's important and not the collection of community members who have shown up to speak. And does anyone really believe that efficiency was the motivation here? It looks more likely, and actually people have said this aloud in this meeting, that certain members want to make sure that some voices within the community that have been very vocal of late simply would go away. But burying your head in the sand is not the way to solve anything. Give priority to listening to us, your constituents. Preserve this important feature of Pasadena politics. Thank you.
Thank you. Denise Robb, followed by Ryan Bell, followed by Heavenly Hughes, followed by Victor Hodson.
Hi, I'm Dr. Denise Robb. I live in District 7, Pasadena resident and PTA president. Democracy is exhausting. I'm exhausted. I've been here for hours. We haven't had dinner yet. And don't assume that just because we're not in person that this is a bad idea, whether you're on Zoom or whether you're in person, because we still will have to wait. Not we, people who are not in the know, who don't read the agenda, those are the people who are going to show up. They're not the people who are waiting for an agenda item. Lots of people don't follow politics the way I do. I'm a political scientist, so it's my obsession. But you have to think about them, and making them wait till midnight to save 20 minutes is silly. It's not going to do any good, and it's hurting your image with the public. People don't like this. So I had an idea. What if you, and you probably don't like this idea, but suppose you had just one extra meeting a month, and then you didn't pack so much stuff on the agenda, because it's nearly impossible to sit through any meeting with public comment or without public comment, because you have so much on your agenda and there's so many people that are, thank God, that are interested. So that's just a suggestion. I think it's a better move because you want more democracy, not less, especially in this day and age when, you know, democracy is threatened. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rob. Ryan Bell, followed by Heavenly Hughes, followed by Victor Hodgson.
Thank you, Council, for the opportunity to speak to you again. Like the others who have spoken, I want to speak up against this change. There's just mathematically no way for 20 minutes to make the meeting go hours long. 20 minutes is bound by physics to be simply 20 minutes. So, and then the rest of the public comment goes to the end of the meeting already. So I guess what I want to highlight is the duplicity that I see going on here, that under the guise of efficiency, and it's been stated explicitly today, and I think Ellen Finkelpearl mentioned this as well, that the real motivation is to stop certain members of the community from speaking, and that's the real reason, and because you stated so yourself. And so I think this is something that the rest of the council should really think about. If the issue were efficiency, the chair of the meeting is in control of the meeting and the timing of the meeting, and really long speeches by council members are the things that I think make the meeting go long. So maybe address that. It's within your power and purview to do, and instead of silencing the members of the community to say things that you don't want to hear. Thank you.
Thank you. Heavenly Hughes, followed by Victor Hodgson, followed by, it's Maddie Gavel Briggs, but Miss Gavel Briggs is not in the meeting. Ms. Hughes?
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
We can. Go ahead.
We echo all the voices who have spoken on this matter regarding public comment. I want to say thank you, Una, and thank you, Ryan, for keeping it real. We know the real reason why you all are doing this. You all do not want to hear us talk about police accountability. That's the bottom line. And the other thing, when you're saying that people outside of Pasadena, I just want to make it clear, though, myself and many others in my family work, live, patronize Pasadena. As a matter of fact, my tribe rides 80% of our work and outreach is right in the city of Pasadena. I went to school all the years of schooling right in Pasadena, Pasadena Unified School District, PCC. I even worked on Capitol Hill with Congressman Moorhead, who represented Pasadena. My life has been focused around Pasadena. And I speak, Victor Marigordo, that my voice should matter. Other voices, former Pasadenians, people who work in Pasadena, our voices all should matter. I would like to ask Cynthia Kirk, how many people who work for the city of Pasadena live outside of Pasadena? Does their voice matter? How many people who work in Pasadena, period, live outside of Pasadena? Does their voice matter? Mayor Victor Gordo, do you want to hear what they have to say? Basically, what Ryan said, it's only 20 minutes.
Ms. Hughes?
Thank you.
Thank you. Victor Hodgson, followed by Maddie Gavel Briggs. If she does not come, then it'll be Jane Penagdiden. I'm not going to get that right. Mr. Hodgson?
Can you hear me?
We can. 1 minute, 30 seconds. Go ahead.
Okay. Yes, I would like to say that I echo all the voices tonight in regards to public comment. We know 20 minutes is not a lot of time anywhere to do anything. I do believe that, like how you guys did tonight was great. We was called first. Put public comment first. I think that works for a lot of people. In what barometer can you measure who's from Pasadena or not? And once again, shouldn't everybody's voice matter? Everybody just sitting on the city council tonight. No one could defy that you guys are from Pasadena 10 years from now. Your voice doesn't matter. You guys done a lot in this city. whether positive or negative. No one can never deny you. So why should we today be denied our voice? As much work as you know, my Tribe Rise and other community leaders have put in the community for great things, for positive things, to include all and to seek peace. I render my time. Thank you.
Thank you. Maddie Gavel Briggs, not in the meeting. Jane Panangadin. 1 minute and 30
Hi.
seconds.
Thanks. Yeah, in the city of Pasadena, the mayor has a lot of power. In particular, the power to set the agenda for the city council meeting. So I am not surprised that the mayor would like to prioritize comments on matters on the agenda as opposed to matters not on the agenda, since he decides what is on the agenda. And in fact, I have noticed, I've been living here for 6 years now, and I have noticed that in that time, there are certain topics that are persistently not on the agenda. And those topics include dealing with the police violence in our city and enacting actual tenant protections and rent control that the community has been demanding. So both of those things I've seen people give public comment time and time again, and it never seems to make it onto the agenda. So yes, I think that it's very clear why the mayor would like to prioritize certain comments and not others. And I think it was really egregious listening to, you know, the description of the deliberations of this ad hoc committee, how people danced around the topic of exactly who they thought was monopolizing this public comment and who they thought was kind of, you know, taking over the whole time and not letting anyone else speak. Because we all know who it is. It's community leaders in Pasadena who are rightfully upset that the city council has not moved to deal with the murder of Anthony McLean.
Thank you,
and the
Jane.
police
Your
violence
time
going
has
on.
expired. Michelle White, followed by Anthony Manusos, followed by Yvonne Trice. Michelle, 1 minute, 30
Yeah.
seconds. Go ahead.
Thank you. I've been attending city council meetings for about 40 years now, and it astounds me that the Pasadena way has really lost its way. The general plan is grounded in what we call our guiding principles, which were developed over an extensive period of time. And the seventh principle is that community participation will be a permanent part of achieving a greater city. Citizens will be provided with timely and understandable information on planning and issues and projects, and citizens will directly participate in shaping plans and policies for Pasadena's future. When this was adopted, we routinely had 3 minutes to talk about things, and we were clearly first on the agenda. Now we're reduced to 1.5 minutes. I don't know when, if at all, we'll ever go back to 3 minutes. We're talking about being last on the agenda, which means we'd be here at 11 or 12 o'clock at night. It's like it's a punishment for wanting to be involved in our city's civics. And I don't understand why you think this makes sense. You're supposed to be accountable to us. We're trying to be accountable to you
Ms.
by
White,
letting you know what's going on.
your time has expired.
We are now, I'm sorry?
Your time has expired.
Okay.
Anthony Manusos, followed by Yvonne Trice, followed by Ed Washaka. Anthony,
Hello,
we
can
can
you
hear
hear
you. Go ahead.
Wonderful. I agree with what the other speakers have said, and this is clearly not what the public wants. I'd like to add that allowing public to speak at the beginning of city council meetings has led to many positive outcomes, such as affordable housing in Heritage Square South and the Civic Center, increasing the inclusionary set aside to 20%, and most recently getting rezoning congregational affordable housing on the agenda. This probably wouldn't have happened if we had been relegated to the end of the meeting. Why then change something that's working reasonably well? And how do you determine whether this so-called pilot is successful? What are your benchmarks? If fewer people speak on unagendized items at the end of the meeting, will you call that a success or a failure? Is your purpose to encourage or to minimize public participation? Before you vote, please state clearly the benchmarks for evaluating this pilot. I want to say also that it's been said that people from outside of Pasadena shouldn't really be prioritized. What's the problem? During the civil rights era, Southerners complained that outside agitators were coming from the North to take away their local control over segregated lunch counters in schools. Dr. King responded, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. So let's continue to let the public, all the public, speak about unagendized items at the beginning of the meeting. As Tina Williams, director of the Ramey Center, said, historically, public discourse
Mr. Manousos.
has held a prominent place in our city's governance. It's one of the many reasons Pasadena is a great place to live. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Yvonne Trice has left the meeting. We'll go to Ed Washatka, followed by Mohammed Tajar, followed by Jane Ward.
Greetings. I'm speaking as a constituent of John Kennedy and member of Pasadena's Organizing for Progress, or PUP. My comments favor keeping the tradition of public comment on non-agendized items at the start of council meetings. The First Amendment states that governments, like the City Council, shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech or the right of the people to petition the government. Petitioning the government is exactly what the public is doing when speaking on non-agendized items. Moving such comment to the end of council meetings definitely abridges the people's rights by making it so difficult and onerous that speakers will find it too demanding to wait to the end of meetings that go on for hours. In recent years, many social and economic justice policies or ordinances, like the minimum wage, immigrant rights, affordable housing initiatives, police reform, to name just a few matters, eventually got agendized and passed by the council after first being heard as a non-agendized item. This change is so chilling, it reminds me of states passing laws abridging people's right to vote, and then trying to rationalize those actions with faulty logic. Really, regardless when comment on non-agendized items occurs, council meetings will last just as long, unless the real goal of this change is to shorten meetings by restricting people's right to petition the council to times when members of the public are unlikely to be around to speak or hear those comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Mohammed Tajar, followed by Jane Ward, followed by Michael Williams.
Thank you. My name is Mohammed Tajar again, Pasadena resident and attorney at the ACLU of Southern California. First of all, I don't appreciate being cut off from my attempt to provide general public comment earlier, which was going to include comments about issues not on the agenda, but I was cut off before being able to provide it. I think that's wrong. Relevant both to my getting cut off and to this proposal, what I was going to express was my support to those members of the community who were making righteous demands for accountability and justice on behalf of victims of this police department's violence. Now, Mr. Madison and Mr. Williams' comments on this item confirm that this proposal appears to be in response to the viewpoints of those messages, rather than a content-neutral, orderly administration of council business. That is legally suspect from the First Amendment's point of view, so that while the council may have been able to make this move for a content-neutral reason, this proposal seems relatively clearly motivated by the viewpoint of some speakers, and that is unconstitutional, right? So in addition, the policy is also wrongheaded because public officials should welcome rather than run away from general public comments. And that's particularly true as it appears that part of the justification for this move is that some non-Pasadena residents are somehow hogging time. But it's just their right to hog time as it is residents, because the city is a thriving center of social, economic, and cultural life that attracts people from across the Southland, and your decisions impact them just as much as they impact residents like me. So the ACLU urges members of this council to express your opposition to the proposal consistent with the unanimous public voices you have heard today. Thank you, and Ramadan Mubarak.
Jane Ward, followed by Michael Williams, followed by Peter Dreyer, followed by Julieta Aragon.
Wow, so much wisdom here in the comments of the previous commenters. I hope the other city council members who seem to be just going along with Victor Gordo's plan have actually listened to what the community has brought to you. I also want to thank the mayor and council members for making so clear that you consider police violence and corruption to be a fringe issue that's not worth your 20 minutes. And thank you for making clear what this is really about, your desire to silence people concerned about police accountability and Black lives. Other commenters who I don't know, I've never heard them before, they're new voices, and I know you love new voices, and Pasadena residents have pointed out the same thing. It's transparent to all of us. You've heard from several Pasadena residents tonight, people who are not part of the group of weekly callers you've been so dismissive of, and I just wonder how many new Pasadena residents need to call in demanding police accountability? How many do you need to hear from in order for you to understand that this is actually an issue of vital concern to the city of Pasadena? The Surge chapter, the Pasadena chapter of Showing Up for Racial Justice, has kept a record of public comment topics for all regular meetings of the city council since January 22. The council's received 112 comments on police accountability and demands to fire officers who've killed Black men in Pasadena. And the council received 30 comments on all other matters combined. And this includes both general comment and comments for matters on the agenda.
Ms. Ward,
Wide gap, not because people wishing to speak to issues other than police accountability have been prevented.
Ms. Ward, your
from doing
time has
so.
expired.
It's because when a city does something so terrible, people call in, flooding the council with
We are
demands.
going to move on to Michael Williams and then Peter Dreyer, then Julieta Aragon. I understand that Ms. Trice may have rejoined the meeting. But we'll go to Michael Williams.
Yes, I'm Michael Williams, Black Lives Matter Los Angeles, and a Pasadena resident. I live within 1 minute's drive away from where Kendrick McDade was killed, from where Anthony McClain was killed, and where J.R. Thomas was killed. So I hope I pass your Pasadena residence test. I call in every week demanding justice for Anthony McClain, and Steve Madison thinks that that's not an important issue, or people don't care about that, which again shows the moral compass of this body. Who cares if other people think it's important? A young man being killed by the police should be on your radar, no matter who thinks it's important or not. This council should be ashamed of the tactic that it's trying to use, should be ashamed of this themselves. You all are blatantly refusing to hold your police department accountable. And in doing so, you are trying to limit the conversation by the community. This is anti-Black, what you're doing. This is against the freedom of speech. This is violating rights. You all should be embarrassed that you even put this on the agenda. I don't have anything else to say to you all. You guys are very, very, it seems like you guys are already going to pass this no matter what we say. So go ahead and pass it. Go ahead and pass it and show the rest of the world how anti-Black and how against freedom of speech you are, and how much you'll go,
Mr.
how many
Williams,
links you
your
go to protecting your police department.
your
Fire the officers that killed
time
Anthony
has
McClain.
expired. We'll go to, is Yvonne Trice with us? Let's bring in Yvonne Trice, followed by Peter Dreyer, then Julieta Aragon, and Jill Shook. Ms. Trice?
Hello?
Hi, 1 minute, 30 seconds. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Yvonne Trice. I'm a mother's voice. I did a lot of work in your community, worked with a bunch of different organizations. And I am a mother that lost a child in that city. And to mute my voice or not have me have a voice, I didn't only live there for 40 years. I still work in that city on a business level and a community faith base and for the community. I am totally, really disappointed because I'm like, I lost my voice for 90 days when my son died in that city. And I feel like waiting all this time, I'm losing my voice again. I don't want to lose my voice again. I appreciate you, Victor Gordo, allowing it to happen today. I missed that, unfortunately. Cynthia Kurtz and John Kennedy, all of you who are chair and members, I'm a mother's voice. It was tragedy for me. And to hear all of this again, it's like tearing me apart and ripping off Band-Aids, telling me that we have to wait all night. When my son got killed in that city, I had to wait all night. I just want to be a part of a community that takes care of the community and the people. Yes, you are our chair. Yes, you are our members. And Victor Gordo, you are our mayor. And Cynthia Kurtz, you are our city management. And we can't come together like the site of the car said, is to protect and serve the community. I am the community, whether I live there or not. I heard someone saying that all of us may have moved for different reasons, or all of us may be in different locations. Well, we're all wanting the same thing: peace in our community. Together,
Ms. Trice,
together we're a dream team. Thank you.
thank you. Peter Dreyer, followed by Julieta Argon, followed by Jill Shook, followed by Bert Newton. Mr. Dreyer, go ahead. 1 minute, 30 seconds.
This is Peter Dreyer. I'm sure most of you, hopefully all of you on the council, are appalled by the infringements on voting rights that's happening in a lot of states around the South in this country, when state governments and local governments make people wait for 5 or 6 or 7 hours just to exercise their right to vote. That's called voter suppression and disenfranchisement. And it's what Republicans have done throughout the South, particularly targeting Black voters, hoping that they won't be able to wait that long to vote because they have to go to work or take care of their kids or go to a doctor's appointment. And so they won't vote, and their votes won't be counted. Well, making people wait until 11 o'clock at night or midnight or later to speak at a Pasadena City Council meeting is the same thing. It's a form of disenfranchisement, especially for working people and the elderly. It's a way of stifling free speech and assembly. If you think about what you're doing as analogous to the disenfranchisement and suppression of the vote by making people wait 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours to exercise their right to vote, I hope you'll understand that what you're doing is outrageous and is probably a violation of basic constitutional rights. And so whether you do this remotely or whether you do this when you go back to in-person meetings for the most part, it's not going to work. This pilot is going to crash.
Mr. Dreyer, your time has expired. Julieta Argon, followed by Jill Shook, followed by Bert Newton, followed by Allison Henry, followed by Adriana Batista.
Yes, good evening, Mayor Gordo and Councilman. My name is Julieta Aragon. I have been a resident in Pasadena for 42 years. And even though I have been a resident for that long, I have only been involved a little with politics and city hall and city meetings only in the last 5 years. I am a mother. I also take care of my mother, and I work full time. And it's really challenging. It's really very challenging when I have to go to City Hall to express something, to say a comment about something because of my work schedule. And the way you are trying to do things, it just kills it for me because I do not have the time after a long day of work to be spending my night at City Hall. So when you say that this is a pilot program, the first thing that is coming to my mind is how vigilant do we have to be in order to know when the pilot program is going to be over? When is it going to be time for us to go back to the same usual, or is it going to stay the same? We don't have the time to be this vigilant. So when you're thinking about the things that you want to do with this pilot program, please do consider us mothers, working mothers with full-time jobs, taking care of families, because we do not have the time for that. And please do not quiet my voice. I'm barely starting to get involved, and I don't want my voice to be quiet down. Thank you.
Thank you. Jill Shook, followed by Bert Newton, followed by Allison Henry, followed by Adriana Batista, and then Alan Shea. Jill?
Good evening. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
So recently I heard Senator Portantino and the mayor from another city come and speak during our public comments. I don't think you would anticipate trying to silence them. If it wasn't for this initial public comment time at the beginning, we likely would not have good inclusionary housing in our city. Heritage Square North or South, National Core's 111 units, proposed at the city council or next to City Hall. Most good housing policy began during public comment and many other important items. But thanks so much for your honesty and why you're considering this as an attempt to stop agitators from speaking. People from all over the world joined, all over the nation joined to address the deaths of Michael Brown and George Floyd. We need others to help us see in our local cities what sometimes we're blind to. And that often takes outsiders to help us see that. We all need each other and each other's voices. The thousands of people who've been displaced from our city due to the cost of housing, and others who live and worship here who deserve to have a voice need to have that moment at the beginning. Those who speak on a regular basis about Anthony McLean are truly gifts to our city. Even though it was uncomfortable, King David in the Bible was being cursed by someone. When he was being cursed, he recognized this may be a message sent by God, so he asked that they not stop him. Now that sounds pretty dramatic, but I think we need to really search our hearts and know what it is that we should be doing. Please bring back the public comment to the beginning of the agenda, open to all. Thank you.
Thank you. Bert Newton, followed by Allison Henry, followed by Adriana Batista, followed by Alan Shea.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and City Council. I think that we should be trying to increase democracy and civic engagement. I think we should be looking for ways to increase public comment. Perhaps maybe allow people who want to speak on matters not on the agenda to choose whether they want to speak at the beginning of the meeting or the end of the meeting. The end of the meeting might be preferable for some people who get home after 5 p.m. But also having to monitor the whole meeting to find out, to be sure you're there when it ends is also difficult. I've helped people try to do that, and it's really hard. And one time we missed it. We missed the end of the meeting. I like that the policy that another person mentioned that another city has of maybe just putting it at 6 p.m. or maybe 7 p.m. That might be even better when people just know when it is and they can show up there. As has been said by several others, very important things have been brought up. A lot of really important things have been brought up during the time for matters not on the agenda. I'm glad to hear that the suggested policy would not necessarily hold when meetings are held in person. But I also want to suggest that even when we are meeting in person again, that Zoom participation would still be allowed, that we have hybrid meetings, because that would increase participation, increase the number of people who are able to participate, people who are disabled, people who have, all kinds of limitations that can't come down would still be able to participate. That would show that we really want to include everyone in our community.
Mr. Newton.
Increased public engagement is best for the health of our city and our society. Thank you.
Thank you. Allison Henry, followed by Adriana Batista, followed by Alan Shea, followed by Pastor Kerwin Manning.
Thank you again, City Council. As someone who's brought people to council, working people, parents, seniors, and just tired out peeps from a day of work and kept us late, I speak against this idea, and frankly, even against the pilot. Like many who've spoken before, I echo the sentiment that I feel this is in response to the folks speaking out against the murder of Anthony McLean, Kendrick McDade, and others of Pasadena police. In the last few years, in response to pandemic, we have had meetings start at 2 p.m., 4:30 p.m., moved from the previous evening starts before pandemic. Public comment is a fixed 20-minute period of time, very closely enforced. This is not a good look or good response. It was through public comment that residents who were marginalized or not used to coming to meetings expressed their voice. The start of the meeting is a reliable time to share with community members, which you've heard from folks speaking before. As council, you've heard from tenants during public comment at the beginning of the agenda, and from hearing from tenants, we were able to make important changes. This pilot is not a pilot, it's not a harmless experiment. Please reject this idea to move the fixed 20-minute period to the end of meetings that may and do go long. This is what democracy looks like. In an era where we want to expand public access and support, this is a bad idea and inconsistent with public engagement. Many of the people who found their civic voice did so making their first public comment. And I really want to stress this for women making comment. So just to say, we made
Ms. Henry.
substantial legislative efforts, closing the Tenant Protection Act of 2019 and the emergency 2020 COVID
Ms.
eviction
Henry,
moratorium.
we're going to move on to Adriana
Please
Batista.
don't pilot. Thank you.
Thank you. Followed by Alan Shea, followed by Pastor Kerwin Manning.
Hello. I'm calling to also say reject this item. I think it's a terrible idea. It seems like the discussion just started recently. And I also noticed it happened after a meeting that started with a closed session that went on for over an hour. Myself and fellow comrades were calling the city clerk's office, and they did not really have a response for us when the meeting would start. So it does seem like there are some, meeting issues that you all are still figuring out. I see that there's a committee that you've made to address these issues, and just a number of comments made by different council members, and like now even the mayor also are just showing sort of residents this idea that you're sort of tired of hearing from us and that we go on and on. Well, I think 20 minutes isn't enough. I think something more like 40 in the beginning and then carrying on the rest of the comments to the end. But that still discourages people because we'll have comrades holding on to the end and communicating with others, but what about those moms and dads and other folks who aren't connected like that, and they just drop off.
Ms.
So,
Batista, your time has
definitely moving
expired.
it to the end because meetings are unpredictable lengths is not a great idea, and we do plan to file a lawsuit against the city because of this.
Thank you.
Dilly-dallying
We'll
with
move
the
on to
following
Alan
the Brown
Shea,
Act and discourage-
followed by Pastor Kerwin Manning. Mr. Shea, *6 to unmute.
Hello, Honorable Victor Gordo and City Councilman. It's been a long day for me out here walking, listening to the City Council meeting while knocking on the doors. As you know, I'm running for City Council in District 7. And it's quite interesting to see the response of the constituents in the area. They are concerned about the image that's being portrayed here on Monday nights about suppressing the voice of the community. One of the things that was shared to the City Council back in August, I think it was August 27th, 2020, was to bring fairness and justice for Anthony McLean. Had that happened, all of this that we're dealing with right now would have never existed. Now we're looking at our own city manager, Cynthia Kurtz. We've asked her to revisit the investigation according to White versus City of Pasadena, because she has the authority, and call it an end under her administration. She won't do it. It's clear that she has the power. It's clear that the police chief has the power.
Alan, if you'll stay on
Excuse me. Let me finish. If we bring a closure to this, I can assure you that we can move on to city business. If not, you're going to continue to hear the voice of the community. And by you suppressing the voice of the community, by changing this, it only
Mr. Shea, your time has expired.
Makes you complicit to suppressing the voice of the community. And that's not what the mayor or the city council should do. Thank you.
Pastor Kerwin Manning.
Yes, thank you so much. Mayor and council, I'm really trying my best not to ascribe an ulterior motive behind this suggestion that you're making. But it's clear that something's going on. My heart is really broken because if this were a reasonable consideration, there would be people on both sides weighing in. And all of the voices tonight have been in support of keeping the space where it is and the time where it is. There have been no voices speaking up for what you say that's so desired. So please really consider this. And I leave you with this. The Lord said to Cain, if you do what's right, it'll go well with you. But if you don't, sin is crouching at your door. And I believe that applies to what's happening in this situation as well. Praying for you guys to make the right decision. God bless you.
Thank you. That completes public comment on this item.
Okay, any other comments or questions from members of the council? Again, this is intended to provide us more public comment for matters that are agendized and noticed as items that the council will take up, often with final action. And I think we can all agree that if we were back in person and members of the public were here, it would likely result in a different situation. Or in a different way forward. With that, more to come. And I think that completes our agenda for the evening.
And
We do have public comments for matters not on the agenda. Thank you. And then we have closed session afterwards. So let's start with the remaining public comment for matters not on the agenda.
Nicole King, followed by Alan Shea, followed by Olden Denham, followed by Jane Ward, followed by Kat Ross, followed by Michael Williams. Nicole King, *6 to unmute, please. Ms. King, *6. Let's go back to her. Alan Shea, *6 to unmute, Mr. Shea. 1 minute, 30 seconds. Go ahead.
Thank you. Well, I think this is probably the quickest time that I've ever gotten back into the discussion. But one thing that's really interesting, and I've caught up almost every Monday, is tonight being April 4th, 54 years after Martin Luther King was assassinated. And we're still asking for justice here for Anthony McLean, no different than what happened with Martin Luther King. And yet a city who has grown in his shadow is still suppressing people's right to justice and being fair. We've given you and laid out to you, City of Pasadena, City Council members, City Manager, you have the power, you have the right, but you just don't want to do it. You don't want to do what's right. And you're going to continue to hear these voices until you do. And all it's going to do is continue to place a dark shadow over Pasadena. So I beg you guys, bring this thing to an end. Fire those officers and let them go through their due process and let it be exercised. You continue to do what you're doing. You're not going to show the residents that you're here to serve them. You're here to serve the departments in the city. That's what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Olden Denham, followed by Jane Ward, followed by Kat Ross, followed by Michael Williams, and then we'll try Nicole King again. *6 to unmute, Mr. Denham. 1 minute, 30 seconds. Go ahead.
Yes, hello. I'm grateful for this short time you've given me to speak. It would be almost impossible for me to add anything to what the people before me have said. So I'm just going to co-sign what they said about pretty much everything about accountability in Pasadena. I am really ashamed of the inaction that I see from my city council. I don't know if the inaction is because you don't want to do the right thing or you're unable to do the right thing. But, you know, I'll say this, it's never the wrong time to do the right thing. So it's still not too late. But Pasadena had a golden opportunity here to step out in the race against racism. And I'm much disappointed in the city that I love so much. I've been here since 1964, and I have seen Pasadena go through a lot of changes. I would love to be able to be talking about some of the changes I see going to Pasadena that concern the overcrowding of housing, and I know the city's not planning for the parking for it. I would love to talk about the parks that aren't being taken care of properly. I'd like to talk about La Pintoresca Park. I heard him talking about another park earlier today. I would love to be talking about why it's taking so long for that park to get repaired. But the main subject is justice. And we've been talking about justice for Anthony McLean for a year and a half, going on 2 years now. And
Mr. Denham, your time has expired. We'll move on to Jane Ward, followed by Kat Ross, followed by Michael Williams, followed by Nicole King. Ms. Ward, 1 minute, 30 seconds. Go ahead.
Thank you for acknowledging that racial justice demands have, to use your wording, monopolized the city council meetings. You've also stated loud and clear that you're tired of hearing that Black Lives Matter and tired of hearing that police should be held accountable for killing residents. But what's amazing to me is that you would like this topic to go away without actually doing anything. I mean, we'd really be happy. I've got a 12-year-old here who is so tired of hearing your voices every Monday as the soundtrack of our dinner. I don't want to be here. Make the topic go away by actually doing something about it. But instead of doing anything, when residents began to speak to you about holding the city's police accountable for anti-Black violence, this is when you began to belittle callers by accusing them of being outsiders whose voices didn't matter. Then you accuse callers of not caring about the appropriate issues. This is mostly Mayor Gordo. Then you ask callers to not speak about race. Then you implied that matters on the agenda are more important than matters not on the agenda, including the death of Black residents. Then you cut public comment time in half. Then you moved public comment to the end of the meeting. And tonight you simply dropped a bunch of public comment cards, including mine, that we had filed, and apparently you lost them. So this is the city's response. These tactics are right out of the racist playbook, but they're also a great example of the way that white supremacists—
Ms. Ward, your time has expired. We'll move on to Kat Ross, followed by Michael Williams, followed by Nicole King. Ms. Ross,
Any Pasadena workers who cause severe injury or death of others should be reprimanded and put on administrative duty until the incident has been fully reviewed and the investigation concluded. But this is not the practice of the city of Pasadena. Police who've shot and killed Pasadena residents, they're sworn to protect and serve, are back on the streets traumatizing victims' families before the administrative reviews have been concluded. They haven't been cleared of wrongdoing, so why are they out in our city? As a council, what metrics will you look at to assess that police are held accountable to following city policy and the law? Ask the city manager to report out to the council what changes have been made to ensure future lives are not lost. Instruct specific policy changes. End the practice of tolling.
do something about this. And I will say the names of whoever else in the future is killed by the Pasadena police force because of y'all's inaction.
Mr. Williams,
I will make sure those names be called.
your time is
Fire the
expired.
officers that killed Anthony McLean. Fire them now.
Nicole King. *6 to unmute. Ms. King, go ahead.
Yes. As a family of Anthony McLean, we are still grieving over the fact that the city manager has not reopened the case, nor fired the officer that killed my cousin Anthony. Our family made a demand, and still we have not received a response from the city manager as of yet. This is unacceptable, and our family deserves answers. And especially for today, it makes it very difficult, being that Martin Luther King was assassinated 50 years ago. Please, we just want justice for Anthony. Thank you.
Thank you. That completes public comment on matters not on the agenda.
Thank you, everyone, for your patience and participation. We now have a closed session to attend to, and so we'll recess the meeting to closed session.
Yes, this is the council will convene in the virtual meeting to discuss closed session item A on today's agenda, and opportunities provided at this time for public comment on the closed session items. There being no public comment requests, the city council will recess in closed session to discuss item A on the agenda. Thank you.